Mom, I'm pregnant. Stumbling over her words, my 14-year-old daughter Margaret spoke those heavy words. The weight of her confession showed in her frail, exhausted appearance, revealing how much she had cried and agonized over this revelation. The once bright and lively Margaret was now a shadow of her former self. Margaret's words were too shocking for me to believe, but when she handed me the positive pregnancy test, there was no room left for doubt. As I tried to grasp the reality of Margaret's pregnancy, I gently probed for more details, hoping to understand the full picture. It must have been so hard to carry this burden alone. Thank you for telling me. When did you take this test? I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry, so sorry. Did you buy the test yourself? And the father? There must be someone responsible for her pregnancy. I knew I shouldn't press too hard, but without understanding the situation, I couldn't take the right steps to help her. Despite my questions, Margaret, seemingly confused and scared, could only mutter apologies. The next day, I talked to my husband Stephen. However, Stephen, who was usually kind and highly sensitive, became deeply troubled and distressed by the news of Margaret's pregnancy. Worried about both of them, we headed to the gynecologist together, taking the bus to the clinic. At the bus stop, I realized I had forgotten the health insurance card, so I rushed back home, leaving Stephen and Margaret at the stop. As I grabbed the health insurance card and hurried out of the house, the landline, which rarely rang, suddenly echoed through the house. Sensing something bad, I answered the phone and was informed that Stephen and Margaret had been taken to the hospital. Not wanting to believe it, I rushed to the hospital, frantically searching for them but to no avail. A police officer present at the hospital broke the shocking news to me. Filled with an overwhelming desire for revenge against those who harmed my precious family, I returned home and gathered the people I needed to talk to. I began by making this confession. Stephen and Margaret ran into the street and were killed. My name is Kelly. I am 43 years old. I was born and raised in the city and worked as a sales representative for a major insurance company. However, I left my job when I got married and moved to the countryside, Stephen's hometown. We live with my in-laws. The reason for this is that I fell in love with Stephen, who is dedicated to preserving the tradition of his family's art dyeing shop, and I wanted to support him. The products sold at my in-laws' art dyeing shop are too valuable to let the tradition die out. While my admiration for Stephen was a big reason, I was also deeply attracted to the products they sold. Recent sales are still in the red, aren't they? Yeah, it's unspeakably bad. The times have changed, and most of our peers have gone out of business. Around here, ours is the last art dyeing shop left. Since moving to the countryside, I had been working at the art dyeing shop, handling sales. Therefore, I knew without asking that the business was in the red. Most of the shop's hours were spent in silence, with no customers. Occasionally, familiar faces of my in-laws would come by to make purchases, but only a handful of visitors. There were days when not a single customer walked through the door. Even without sales, maintaining the shop cost money. The products at the art dyeing shop are made by my father-in-law Joseph, Stephen, and a few other craftsmen. Selling with my mother-in-law Brittany and sister-in-law Melissa, and me. Although it's a small business, we have a minimum number of employees, and with such ongoing deficits, closing down seems imminent. If things continue like this, we will slowly decline day by day. I didn't want that to happen. As soon as the thought struck me, I took action. With my in-laws' permission, I fully utilized the skills I had honed working for an insurance company and approached various stores to promote our products. While searching for stores willing to carry our products, I also began considering the development of new products that would align with current trends and started taking action. Still a novice when it came to dyeing, I sought knowledge by visiting a couple who had once run an art dyeing shop and had a connection with my in-laws. From there, I expanded my network, investigating the current demand for dyeing and gathering information. I've never seen dyeing designs like this before. But Kelly, these designs were developed with the help of many people. I'll discuss it with Dad and the other craftsmen. Thank you. I hope this will help boost our sales, even a little. Thanks to the new products developed through collaboration with various people, customer traffic started to increase slightly. After that, having given birth to my daughter, I no longer had the luxury of time to visit the shop. However, I still wanted to contribute to sales, so I started selling through social media. In this way, over 10 years passed. We launched many new products, secured partnerships with stores willing to sell our products, and passionately carried out online sales. Eventually, the art dyeing shop finally escaped the brink of closure. The business began to get back on track. Stephen grew into a skilled craftsman, and Margaret entered middle school. She became more independent, and her thinking became more mature, needing less and less parental guidance, which brought a mix of pride and melancholy. Despite this, watching Margaret engage in sports every day, full of smiles, enjoying her life, filled me with a stronger sense of joy. About a year passed smoothly, and as Margaret moved up a grade and turned 14, the once active and cheerful Margaret gradually became withdrawn. At first, I thought it was just a phase of rebellion, but she still listened to me and Stephen and didn't seem to be avoiding us, suggesting another cause. Margaret, has something happened lately? You don't seem yourself. It's nothing. I'm just a bit tired. I'll go back to my room now. Even when we tried to create opportunities for discussions, Margaret only said she was tired from sports and retreated to her room. As Margaret spent more time in her room, both Stephen and I grew increasingly concerned. With Margaret back in her room, and just the two of us in the living room, I couldn't help but express my anxiety to Stephen. Why do you think she won't talk to us? Am I that unreliable? Kelly, you're a wonderful mom, even from my perspective. She'll talk to us when she's ready. Do you think something happened at school, or maybe? I'm just as worried. Let's be patient for a little longer, Kelly. Encouraged by Stephen's kind words, I resolved to spend more time with Margaret. She must be feeling lonely during this sensitive period. Maybe, at her age, parents can seem bothersome, but my feelings and love for Margaret remain unchanged. Hoping she would sense this, I did my best to connect with Margaret and support her. Weeks passed, and Margaret, who still hadn't regained her cheerfulness, began to appear more strained and often seemed lost in thought. Suppressing the urge to interfere out of concern, I continued my daily routine. Mom! After finishing my social media check and packing the products I sell online, Margaret came to me. It was already late at night. Usually, Margaret would be asleep in her room by this time, but tonight she came out and walked into the living room where I was. This might be a sign that she's ready to share her troubles. Thinking this, I shook off my sleepiness and had Margaret sit on the sofa for now. What's wrong, Margaret? It's okay. You can take your time and tell me slowly. Yeah. Margaret seemed to be choosing her words, or maybe she just didn't have the courage to speak yet. It felt like it had been a while since I had seen Margaret face to face like this. Looking closely, she lacked her usual energy and her complexion was pale. Lately, she hadn't been eating much dinner and seemed to have lost some weight, so I was eager to hear what she had to say. But I knew that rushing her now might just drive her away after she had finally decided to talk to me, so I held back my impatience. How long did I wait, gently patting Margaret's back? Finally, she opened her mouth heavily. Mom. I'm pregnant.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. Margaret pulled out a pregnancy test showing a positive result with trembling hands. The reality hit me so hard that I couldn't think of anything. But seeing Margaret crying and apologizing endlessly, I realized she must have been suffering and struggling alone until now, and my heart ached for her. Margaret, it must have been so hard for you, carrying this alone all this time. I'm sorry. So, is there someone you have in mind? If you're pregnant. Even though I asked, all I got in return were sobs and apologies. I knew I shouldn't push her, but without knowing the facts, it would be hard to plan for the future. I tried asking all the questions that came to mind. But Margaret just kept shaking. I'm sorry. Mom. Please forgive me, don't hate me. It's okay, Margaret, Mom won't hate you. Margaret seemed overwhelmed by the gravity of what she had done, almost hyperventilating, unable to give any details. It was late, and I thought she should sleep and gather her strength, so I calmed her down and decided to hear the details at the hospital tomorrow. The next day, I woke up earlier than usual and woke up Stephen.
What's wrong? Why are you up so early?
I'm sorry to wake you so early, but there's something important. It's about Margaret. When Stephen realized it was about Margaret, he immediately sat up and got ready to listen. I need you to stay calm. Margaret, she's pregnant. I just found out last night, and I only know the basic facts.
Pregnant? That can't be true.
It was understandable that he couldn't believe it. Stephen's eyes widened, and his voice and lips trembled. He seemed to be thinking, could this really be our child? I felt the same way. Margaret must have been really troubled. When she told me, she was almost hyperventilating and kept apologizing. You've noticed how she's been acting recently, right? Yeah. When Margaret told me, I was extremely shaken and felt like my emotions were about to explode, but Stephen seemed even more shocked than I was. He was clearly flustered and trying hard to listen, but his vague responses made it seem like he wasn't really hearing me. Stephen is naturally a kind and sensitive person. Though he doesn't express it, he might be imagining Margaret's feelings and feeling hurt as if it were his own. And as a father, he is probably shocked that his middle school-age daughter is pregnant. When we get to the hospital and talk in detail, please don't say anything that might upset Margaret. We're planning to go to the OBGYN in the neighboring town today. Please come with us. Okay. I felt that I couldn't keep the truth hidden and told him, but seeing Stephen's shock and exhaustion, I regretted it immediately. But I am doing the right thing. Stephen is probably trying his best to understand the truth. In that case, I need to act with strong will. I contacted his parents and told them that Margaret suddenly fell ill, and asked for permission for Stephen and me to take the day off. When Margaret woke up, I asked her again about the circumstances of her pregnancy, but I couldn't get any valuable information. She might have found it difficult to talk in front of her father, so I just gently hugged her without saying anything. As we were doing this, I realized it was time to leave, and the three of us left the house. At the bus stop, I suddenly realized I had forgotten something important.
Oh, I think I forgot Margaret's health insurance card.
Should I go back and get it? No, you and Margaret wait here at the bus stop. I'll get it and come right back. I could have let Stephen do it, but seeing how exhausted he was after hearing Margaret's story, I felt it was dangerous to let him walk that long distance alone. He might get distracted and not pay attention. And I couldn't make Margaret, who still looked pale and sick, walk unnecessarily, so I left them at the bus stop and hurried back home. Our house is quite a distance from the bus stop. I decided to run back home as fast as I could. Ideally, I wanted to take Margaret to the OBGYN as soon as possible. As I ran, panting, I blamed myself for forgetting something so important. When I got home and put the health insurance card in my wallet, the rarely used landline phone started ringing. I could have ignored it and rushed to the nearest station, but I felt I had to answer it. I ran to the living room and picked up the phone. The caller was a nurse from the biggest hospital in the area. In a calm voice, she told me the shocking news that Stephen and Margaret had been taken to the hospital. The hospital was busy, and she couldn't tell me more, only to come to the hospital immediately. Filled with shock, I headed to the hospital where they were likely taken. Images of a distressed and unwell Margaret and a shocked and exhausted Stephen kept flashing in my mind. I imagined the worst scenario where they might have suddenly jumped into the road together. Even though I told myself it couldn't be, the worst scenario kept playing over and over in my mind. Please be okay. When I arrived at the hospital and entered the emergency entrance, I saw many nurses and doctors rushing around. A little further inside, I saw the surgery light glowing red. A bad feeling churned in my chest, mocking my hopes that my worst fears were just overthinking. I couldn't very well talk to the nurses running around in a hurry, and I didn't know where to go, so I stood there, unsure and anxious. A police officer approached me and asked, "Is there something wrong?"
Actually,
I explained the events that had led me here. The officer nodded slightly, looking like he understood. It seemed that this officer had been waiting for me. Then, to discuss what had happened to Stephen and Margaret, he opened his mouth gravely. "Brace yourself. The truth is..." The facts he revealed shocked me, igniting a fire of vengeance within me. I left the hospital alone and returned home. To report the day's events to my in-laws, I gathered everyone in the living room after closing the shop. "I'm sorry, but could Joseph, Brittany, and Melissa all gather here?"
what's going on? I've been worried about Margaret's health.
Did something happen to Margaret? Ignoring the concerned Joseph and Brittany, Melissa looked bored, staring at her nails. My anger boiled over, but I had to hold on a little longer. I was determined to expose her true nature. With that feeling, I began speaking passionately. The truth is, Margaret was pregnant. On the way to the OBGYN with Stephen, they were in an accident and both died. My in-laws were at a loss for words. That's normal. It was too shocking for them to comprehend immediately. However, Melissa's reaction was different. She trembled and looked panicked upon hearing my words. Her reaction was so predictable that I almost laughed, but I held it back. Melissa turned pale and started shaking. My in-laws tried to calm her down, but she brushed them off.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. How could I have known she would jump in front of the car?
She screamed and ran out of the living room. My in-laws were stunned, not understanding what was happening, and just watched her run off.
Wow! What
happened? Joseph and Brittany, hearing the loud scream, stood up and ran out of the living room. They found Melissa on the floor, having collapsed. In front of her were Stephen and Margaret, staring at her with intense contempt.
How could you do such a terrible thing to my beloved daughter? I trusted you, Melissa. This is far from unforgivable. We've already informed the police. You'll have to face the consequences for what you've done.
Joseph and Brittany looked at me, confused and not knowing what to make of it all. Even though it was to expose Melissa's wrongdoing, I had lied and confused my in-laws, so I decided to come clean and apologize. When I arrived at the hospital, the police officer told me that Stephen and Margaret had fallen down the stairs near the bus stop. According to eyewitnesses, Stephen tried to catch Margaret as she stumbled, but they both fell and rolled down the stairs. A passerby who witnessed the accident called an ambulance and also reported it to the police, so they were rushed to the hospital within minutes. Although Stephen and Margaret suffered bruises all over their bodies, their lives were not in danger, and they didn't need to be hospitalized, which was a relief. The police officer who had responded to the call was very kind. Even though the accident had already been handled, he waited for me, a relative, at the hospital's emergency ward.
You mentioned she might be pregnant, but given how she fell, there's a chance she could have miscarried.
No way.
They're running tests right now. Please follow me.
As I was led to the back of the emergency ward, I saw Stephen and Margaret sitting on chairs in the hallway, and I rushed over.
Margaret! Stephen! I'm so glad you're okay.
Kelly, I'm sorry to have worried you. Mom, I'm sorry. As I hugged them, feeling their warm bodies and hearing their responses, I couldn't help but cry with relief. Stephen had bandages on his arms and head, but Margaret seemed unharmed. While I felt relieved, I also remembered the conversation with the police officer earlier. Experiencing both pregnancy and miscarriage at this age is just too cruel.
By the way, what about the test results? About that. Margaret isn't pregnant. What? Really?
Margaret had been worried about her late period, but according to the doctor, it was likely due to age-related instability, lack of sleep, or stress. Her diet had been irregular lately, which probably contributed as well.
But the test showed positive. The doctor found that strange too.
Margaret, where did you get that test?
It was from Melissa.
As soon as she began speaking, Margaret started crying, remembering something. I quickly pulled out a handkerchief and wiped her tears, but they kept flowing. Trying to understand what had driven Margaret to this point, Stephen and I listened closely, even as her explanation became fragmented and confused. From what we gathered, Margaret had been troubled by her missed periods for about 2 months. She had never experienced this before and was anxious when Melissa found out. Isn't it weird that you haven't had your period for 2 months? It could be something serious, or you might be pregnant.
Yeah, it's really worrying.
Just in case, why don't you take a pregnancy test? I have a few.
I haven't done anything that would make me pregnant, though.
Just in case. It only takes a minute. Overwhelmed by Melissa's insistence, Margaret reluctantly agreed to take the test. The result was positive. Even though Margaret hadn't done anything that could lead to pregnancy, the result puzzled her, so she went to Melissa for advice.
I took the test. It's positive, right?
What? No way. Getting pregnant at your age is a huge deal. Your future is ruined. You won't be able to go to school anymore.
But I haven't done anything to get pregnant.
The test result is everything. Do you know how accurate these tests are? 99%. That means you're pregnant. What are you going to do now? This will cause trouble for your mom and dad too.
No, what should I do, Melissa?
Even though she insisted she hadn't done anything wrong, Melissa's assertion that the test result was definitive overwhelmed Margaret. Confused and panicked, Margaret sought Melissa's help. But Melissa looked at Margaret with disdain and brushed her off. Pregnant in middle school? What were you thinking? It's disgusting. How could you do something like that without knowing anything? It's too irresponsible.
What?
You can't even make money on your own and you're talking about having a baby? That's completely unacceptable. It's a serious offense. Our shop has finally started to recover after all the hard work. If your baby causes us to struggle again and the shop ends up closing, I will never forgive you. You better do something about it. Instead of giving Margaret the right information, Melissa only fueled her fears and anxieties, ranting at her before storming off. Left alone, Margaret didn't know what to do next. She felt paralyzed by Melissa's words and couldn't seek advice or help. The thought that her parents, her ultimate protectors, might say the same thing as Melissa terrified her. She felt she had no choice but to bear the burden alone. Unable to consult even her friends, Margaret carried the heavy possibility that she might be pregnant all by herself. This situation drained Margaret of her energy, causing sleep deprivation and a loss of appetite. Margaret's fall down the stairs was also due to dizziness from lack of sleep and nutrition. As she finished telling her story, Margaret's face was wet with tears and snot. It was far too much for a middle schooler to bear alone. I held Margaret tightly. Stephen, who had been listening, was also in tears, and for a while, the three of us just hugged each other. Margaret, it must have been so hard. I'm sorry I didn't notice. Me too. I'm sorry, Margaret.
No, Mom and Dad, I could feel you were with me, so it's okay.
Even after hugging for a while, Margaret's tears didn't stop, and she was trembling, probably because recalling everything was so painful. It seemed this incident had become a trauma for her, and it was truly heartbreaking. I couldn't forgive Melissa for putting our child through this. I told Stephen and Margaret to come back when they were calm, and I left the hospital alone. After hearing the whole story, my in-laws turned red-faced and glared at Melissa. Melissa, who had lost all her allies, was looking around, searching for words.
By the way, the pregnancy test you gave Margaret, wasn't it a fake? I did some research. I found out there's a fake pregnancy test that always shows positive. It's mainly sold online. Do you know about this? I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
Then, can you show us your purchase history?
Why should I let you see what's in my smartphone? No way. I'll never show you. If you didn't know, you wouldn't try to run away. Besides, you just said you didn't expect things to go this far. That's practically admitting you did it. I said I don't know.
As Melissa stood up to escape, Joseph grabbed her, demanding she show the shopping site, and she couldn't resist anymore. Finally, Melissa, resigned, threw her smartphone with the purchase history displayed towards me. Of course. The screen showed the purchase history of the prank pregnancy tests. This was proof of Melissa's actions. Feeling exposed, Melissa confessed everything with a defiant look.
Yes, I did it all. I couldn't stand Kelly, who came in and started acting all high and mighty. So when I found out about Margaret's irregular periods, I thought I'd just mess with her a little. It was just a joke. Why is everyone ganging up on me?
Melissa's confession revealed her selfish motives. It showed how I had dedicatedly contributed to the art dyeing shop's sales and turned the business around. Furthermore, thanks to the efforts I put into my interactions during my sales activities, I began to get along well with the residents in the area, and the number of acquaintances I had increased. From Melissa's perspective, she seemed to resent the fact that I was getting along better with them than she was. Unlike me, who was always proactive and tried to initiate interactions with others, Melissa was always passive in nature. She had a beautiful, well-arranged face that everyone, including herself, acknowledged. Because of this, Melissa, who took pride in her beauty, believed that others should always make the first move. She was pleasant to those who did something for her, but her attitude was cold towards those who didn't do anything special. I believe that this is where the difference in our popularity came from.
What the hell? Just because you have some sales skills, you probably just begged and flattered everyone around you. Everyone's all Kelly, Kelly, even though you're not prettier than me. Hey! How dare you say that to Kelly? Kelly has been tirelessly thinking up new products and picking out stores where we could sell them, sacrificing her sleep for our shop. What the hell have you been doing during that time? Stephen, please, that's enough.
I was furious at what Melissa was saying, but with Margaret right in front of me. I didn't want to show her a scene of us fighting with harsh words. Sensing this, Stephen directed his gaze towards the entrance, suppressing his anger.
I called the police, so there's no way we're letting you off. There's no need to make such a big deal out of this. Can't you take a joke? This is ridiculous.
Melissa, who was being led away by Stephen, continued to complain loudly while being questioned by the police officers who arrived in response to Stephen's call. These officers were different from the ones at the hospital, but they seemed to have been briefed well, as they were already familiar with most of the situation. Melissa, seemingly intimidated by the police, or perhaps thinking it would be quicker to be honest rather than trying to hide anything, confessed the truth straightforwardly. Her tone was incredibly light. All along, she insisted to the police that it was just a lighthearted joke, and that she had no obligation to apologize. Witnessing this, my in-laws repeatedly apologized to me and Margaret. Even though I told them that they weren't the ones at fault and that they didn't need to apologize, they wouldn't listen. While we were going back and forth like this, Melissa was released and came back to us.
I went through such a horrible experience. This is so ridiculous. You apologized to Margaret and Kelly. Yes. How could you do this? Do you have any idea how much Margaret has been hurt?
What? I keep telling you, it was a joke.
How many times do I have to say it for you to get it?
Not once did we hear a word of apology from Melissa, who spoke mockingly. When Stephen, having finished speaking with the police, returned to me with a frustrated look on his face. I could tell that the outcome wasn't good.
The police were frustrated too, but they said that this wasn't an arrestable offense. They gave her a stern warning, but it doesn't seem to have any effect.
I see, that's true. Melissa, who only received a warning from the police, was smugly complaining. Despite having turned my in-laws, Stephen, Margaret, and me into her enemies, she seemed completely unfazed. Even though I thought we might be able to give her a good lesson, my attempt at revenge ultimately failed, leaving me with nothing but the bitter taste of frustration and tears. For the next few days, considering the burden on Margaret's heart, I tried to live without facing Melissa as much as possible, but I couldn't be satisfied. Even though my in-laws continued to apologize to me and Margaret, that wasn't the issue. Why should we, who have done nothing wrong, have to be considerate and feel out of place? Moreover, even at the store, Melissa started to complain and harass me. Thanks to Brittany's warnings, it didn't escalate, but the resentment still built up. I couldn't make Margaret feel safe here. So I decided to tell Stephen that I wanted to leave the in-laws' house and build a home for the three of us. When the art dyeing shop's management was tough, we didn't receive decent salaries, so we hadn't been able to save money. However, there are no apartments in this rural town. If we wanted to live, we needed to build a house. I knew it would be tough, but to make it happen, I focused intensely on sales and online marketing. A few months later, as we began to accumulate funds, Melissa suddenly abandoned the family business and left the house one day. The reason was that she found her destined love. Such a selfish reason made my in-laws explode with anger. After many calls, Joseph finally told Melissa she was disowned and hung up roughly. A year had passed since Melissa left, and we were considering moving out of the in-laws' house, but with Melissa suddenly gone, we were still living with them. The business was still thriving, and every day was busy with work. I had almost forgotten about Melissa's existence. One night, the phone rang at the house. I wondered who it could be at this hour, watching Joseph, who was nearby, answer the phone. Joseph picked up the receiver with a deep sigh, frowning.
Hey! There's no house! What's going on?
The loud, familiar voice from the phone shocked both Stephen and me, and we exchanged glances. I never dreamed that Melissa would call. But Joseph remained calm, as if he had always known this call would come.
The house was sold a long time ago. What? I didn't hear that. Tell me where you moved. There's no way I'm telling you. You're no longer part of us.
Actually, after Melissa left, about half a year later, we moved to the city. It was suggested by my in-laws. I didn't know the deep reasons, but with Melissa's personality, there was no way she could live peacefully with a man. My in-laws were wary of Melissa returning in trouble after being kicked out someday.
What are you talking about? There's a store. I need to take over, or you'll be in trouble. I haven't forgiven you for calling the art dyeing shop's work outdated. I'd rather quit the business than let you take over.
Joseph was more furious than I had ever seen. He was usually calm, just like Stephen, and I had rarely seen him angry. For Joseph to raise his voice this much, it was serious. And to think that she had called the art dyeing shop's work outdated in the past was surprising. Thinking of how my in-laws had tolerated and supported such an ungrateful daughter until now brought tears to my eyes.
I'll say it again, you're disowned. Don't show up in front of us anymore. Wait. I'm in a really tough situation right now. Money. I need money. Dad, please help me.
Before Melissa could finish, Joseph put the receiver back, and we couldn't hear her anymore. In the end, I realized she was trying to play the sympathy card, but I wasn't sure how that pleading tone sounded to Joseph. When Joseph hung up the phone, his back looked unbearably lonely, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything to him. Stephen gently patted my shoulder as I stood there speechless. In this place far from our hometown where the store was located, we had no idea what Melissa was up to, and our days became busy once again. But a few months later, while I was minding the store with Brittany, some acquaintances of my in-laws came all the way from afar to visit us. This couple had been loyal customers even when the store was on the verge of closing down. For a while, they continued to buy our products online, but they decided to visit us while on a trip. And it was from this couple that I learned about Melissa's current situation. When Melissa realized she had lost her home, she apparently started going around the neighborhood, asking anyone and everyone for help. Being a small, close-knit rural community, Melissa's misdeeds were already known to all the residents, and instead of offering a helping hand, no one even spoke a kind word to her. She had spent her days being criticized as a shameless person who hurt teenage girls with unethical jokes, and brazenly stood up to the police. Living in such a small village without any allies must have made even Melissa feel quite out of place. And as for Melissa's boyfriend, whose details were unclear before, it turned out he was a man from a nearby men's club she frequented. Melissa, confident in her looks, believed that this man was infatuated with her. To make him even more captivated, she spent a lot of money, even depleting her savings lavishly. After leaving, she barely worked, kept racking up debt, and frequented the men's club. But such a lifestyle couldn't last forever, and when she couldn't repay her debts or borrow more money, she turned to the man she was obsessed with for help. Naturally, the man, who made a living selling dreams to women, had no intention of falling for a pretty-faced woman who had created her own debts. And he dumped her without helping her, leaving her to struggle with her debts. With no place to stay, Melissa was forced to live on the streets for a while. But the townsfolk, not wanting her to suddenly die on the streets, let her stay in a rundown, less than clean abandoned house with a hole in the roof. Currently, Melissa, still unable to bring herself to work honestly despite her dire straits, clings to the little money she has left, trying to lure wealthy-looking men to hotels. She uses a pregnancy test kit given to her by Margaret, which always shows a positive result, and after having relations with various men, she tells them she's pregnant, demanding marriage or child support. It's absurd that she's still chasing rich men at this point, but her scheme has yet to succeed, and she often returns to the abandoned house looking like a worn-out rag. Since the area around our hometown is not urban, Melissa's infamy spread rapidly. People started gossiping about a beautiful woman who threatens men with pregnancy to extort marriage and child support, making it increasingly difficult for her to lure men to hotels. Even when she occasionally succeeds in bringing a man to a hotel, she often ends up getting scammed instead, the couple visiting the store said. Melissa, who has lost her home, can no longer maintain her once confident beauty or enjoy a comfortable residence. I felt a slight relief in my heart, having managed to exact revenge in an unexpected way. It's a pity that I can't see her current state in person, but right now, I can't even spare the time to go check on Melissa. She is still so hopeless, always causing trouble for everyone. Brittany. Despite having disowned her like Joseph, kind-hearted Brittany seemed saddened upon hearing about Melissa's situation. She was also concerned about the trouble Melissa was causing the former neighbors, but the couple who came to the store laughed, saying it provided interesting gossip. After chatting for a bit and buying some new products, the couple left. By the way, the reason my in-laws suggested we move was that we had been saving money to leave their house to avoid Melissa. It was just a casual conversation, but my in-laws offered to pool their money with ours to build a new home in a new place. My parents had also been considering relocating to a more convenient location and had been saving little by little. Thanks to this, we were able to build a better house than expected, and beside the house and store, there was a factory. The craftsmen, who admired my in-laws and had stuck with us through tough times, followed us to this distant new land. Recently, young apprentices inspired by the quality of our products have started joining us, and our family has begun working together to pass down the traditions. Though the road ahead is still long, I feel a strong sense of fulfillment in this work. Margaret, after being advised by the doctor to stop her irregular lifestyle, seems to have a normal menstrual cycle now and is fitting in well with the friends she made at her new school. Lately, Margaret has developed a keen interest in fashion and has been thinking about creating designs incorporating dyed fabrics for clothes and scarves. Her design ideas, coming from a perspective we don't have, bring new discoveries. Though there is so much to do that I barely have time to rest, I feel fulfilled and busy every day. We aim to grow the company more and spread the charm of dyed fabrics to many people.
Get out of here with your child, you horrible woman!
Brittany, my mother-in-law, screamed as she threw my belongings at me. I looked at my husband, Daniel, hoping he would help me, but he just looked away awkwardly.
How dare you deceive my precious son? I haven't cheated. This child is definitely Daniel's. Shut up! You're saying that, but you're probably cheating with that part-time worker, Christopher.
Those words made me furious. I was already irritated being accused of a cheating I didn't commit, and now she was suspecting me of being involved with Christopher too. I glared at Brittany.
What? Do a DNA test.
Sure, go ahead. At my words, Brittany gave a smug smile. Only an idiot would prepare evidence of her own affair. Brittany laughed as she said that. I vowed to prove to Brittany that I had never cheated. 2 weeks later, after confirming the test results, I sent them to the in-laws' house. A few hours later, she must have seen the results. In the short time I looked away, my smartphone had dozens of messages from Brittany.
What did you do?
My name is Miranda. I am a 27-year-old housewife.
Miranda, Robert. Dinner is ready.
Oh, thank you, as always. My parents were always gentle and I rarely saw them argue. My mother, Samantha, was always calm and made sure that my father, Robert, and I lived peacefully. I respected my mother for that, and my father never forgot to show his appreciation for her. Thanks to being raised by such parents, I rarely get angry. Of course, there are things I can't compromise on and things that frustrate me. But getting angry tires me out, and it's easier to give up than to get angry. Miranda, are you okay? You always give in to others. My mother would sometimes worry about me, but I believe I have my own opinions. I live by not compromising where I can't, and at a pace that is comfortable for me. Because of that. Miranda, you're really easygoing. My friend, Sarah, often said. I don't mind being thought of as easygoing. As long as I don't inconvenience others, there shouldn't be any problem. Besides, there are people who like me for being this way.
I like you, Miranda, because you're gentle.
Daniel said. I met him in college. We met at a dinner party organized by a mutual friend.
I hate conflicts. I like someone like Miranda who is calm and doesn't argue.
Daniel said at the dinner party. He didn't really want to attend the party but didn't want to offend his friend by declining. That's why he attended.
You're considerate of your friends. That's wonderful. Thank you. Hey Miranda, if you're not seeing anyone right now, would you go out with me?
And so, we started dating after his confession. He accepted that I had things I couldn't compromise on, and we had no major arguments and no problems while dating.
Miranda, will you marry me?
Yes, gladly. After a few years of dating, we got married.
Thank you for marrying Daniel.
He's really lucky to have you. His parents were gentle people too, Brittany, who is always smiling, and father-in-law, Joseph, who is calm-looking. I felt truly grateful that these two became part of our family at that moment.
What, Joseph?
Shortly after Daniel and I got married, Joseph was hospitalized. Apparently, he was involved in a car accident. Fortunately, his life wasn't in danger, but he broke his leg and had to stay in the hospital for a while.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't serious.
I'm sorry for worrying you. When Daniel and I went to visit, Joseph apologized, looking genuinely remorseful.
Really, when I heard about the accident, I thought I'd have a heart attack.
Brittany looked worried as she spoke. Actually, my in-laws run a restaurant. Basically, Brittany handles the front, and Joseph, along with a few part-time workers, handles the support. Joseph is good at paperwork, but Brittany, on the other hand.
I get headaches from staring at letters and numbers for too long.
She said it was hard for her. In such a situation, Joseph, who usually handles the back end, was hospitalized. Some of the tasks involve money, so they couldn't be left to part-time workers. What are they going to do now? I muttered involuntarily. Joseph's sudden hospitalization must be mentally tough already. With things like this, they might have to close the restaurant temporarily. I thought about this while heading home with Daniel.
Miranda, can I talk to you for a moment?
As I was relaxing at home, Daniel approached me, looking apologetic. From his expression, I had a hunch about what he wanted to say. Can you quit your job and help out at my family's restaurant? He pleaded. Daniel and I work at completely different companies. Daniel, you know how important my job is to me, right? Daniel averted his eyes from my question. I work at a company founded by Sarah. I've always dreamed of working in design, and I'm deeply passionate about my job. I've talked about this with Daniel many times, and he always supported me.
I understand. But I want you to help out until Dad recovers.
I felt conflicted by his words. So, I told Daniel I needed some time to think and put the decision on hold. Certainly, running the restaurant would be difficult in this situation. But honestly, if he's that worried, Daniel should help out himself. Well, that would be impossible. Daniel is as bad at paperwork as Brittany. Considering he doesn't do housework, he probably can't cook either. If Daniel tried to help at the restaurant, he'd just be in the way. So, it's really up to me, I muttered, deciding to consult with Sarah.
I see. I understand the difficulty of your in-laws and the pressure you feel as their daughter-in-law.
Exactly.
Also, I don't have a bad relationship with them and I do want to help.
That's why I need to ask you something. Sarah readily agreed to my request. Thanks to that, I decided to help out at the restaurant. Daniel, about the restaurant. I'll help out.
Really? Thank you.
Daniel was overjoyed at my decision, and when Brittany heard about it,
Thank you.
she was happy too. Seeing their happiness made me determined to do my best. Just when I thought that, if you're here, you're going to be useful. Brittany's demeanor changed drastically. Originally, Brittany was supposed to cook while the part-time workers handled the front. And I was supposed to handle the back end, even though I was inexperienced. But Brittany started giving orders.
Hurry up and take the orders. If you have time to idle, clean up. Clean the plates and wash them.
Commanding me one after another. Gradually, it escalated, and eventually, she even started making me do simple cooking tasks. She wouldn't let me take any breaks, and as soon as I tried to sit down, she'd say, "Don't rest."
Miranda, I'll handle this. You go take a break over there.
That was Christopher, a college student and part-time worker leader. He always looked out for everyone and subtly helped out. But for me, who wasn't used to this, being treated roughly every day was exhausting. If this keeps up, I'm going to collapse.
Come on, just hang in there until Dad gets back. We'll manage somehow.
Even when I told Daniel how I was being treated, he just smiled awkwardly and said that Daniel wouldn't even listen to my complaints. Sigh, maybe I made the wrong choice. At first, I thought Daniel was a kind and peace-loving person. But in reality, he just didn't want to get involved in any trouble. That's why he didn't even try to mediate between Brittany and me. Seeing this side of Daniel made me sigh. I need to rest soon. Brittany told me to come early again tomorrow morning. I gave up talking to Daniel and decided to rest in my room.
Hurry up and get to work. Don't just stand around.
That day, while helping at the store from the morning, I felt sick and had to crouch down.
Ugh. I feel sick. Miranda, you don't look well. Are you okay?
Noticing my condition, Christopher offered to take me to the hospital.
Thank you, Christopher. It's no problem. Miranda, you always help out my sister.
Christopher said with a bright smile. Christopher is Sarah's younger brother. I was surprised to see him working part-time at the family store.
But really, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to get to the hospital.
When I tried to go to the hospital, Brittany tried to stop me, complaining. Christopher stood up to her.
Are you seriously going to make a sick person work?
And thanks to him, I could go to the hospital.
Congratulations. What?
After the examination, it turned out I was pregnant. Apparently, I had been feeling sick because of morning sickness. I immediately contacted Daniel.
What? Pregnant? Is that true? Wait, pregnant?
Miranda is pregnant? Even though it was Daniel's call, I heard his parents' voices. Why can I hear Joseph's voice? When I asked, Daniel explained the situation a bit awkwardly. Apparently, Brittany, upset by my absence, called Daniel and they went to Joseph's place to complain.
But earlier, Dad scolded her, saying, "She's working out of goodwill. What are you complaining about?"
I see. Joseph had reprimanded Brittany.
Miranda quit her job to help us out of goodwill. Don't make her work when she's feeling sick.
Hearing that made me feel a bit relieved. Knowing that Joseph was on my side. It gave me some comfort.
Miranda, congratulations on your pregnancy.
Joseph then took over the phone. I'm sorry about my wife. I've told them to pay you more. It was then that I realized I hadn't been receiving any salary. I had been so busy and overwhelmed that I completely forgot about my pay.
Miranda? You haven't been getting your paycheck, have you?
He must have guessed because I stayed silent. Joseph asked, his voice filled with anger. I've been getting it for her. Daniel hastily answered Joseph's question.
Why are you getting it? It's Miranda's paycheck, so it should go to her.
Joseph's voice was low and cold. Brittany was the one to respond. Well, Miranda is Daniel's wife, so it goes to Daniel as her husband.
Cut it out. She's an important daughter to her family. What on earth are you thinking?
Joseph scolded sharply. This was something I heard later, but Joseph, usually a mild-mannered man, becomes terrifyingly angry when common sense or manners are breached. Brittany was usually scared of Joseph and kept a friendly demeanor around him. However, with Joseph hospitalized and out of sight, Brittany went out of control this time.
You married quite a handful, didn't you?
Christopher, who had been silently listening by my side, said with a wry smile. I returned his smile with one of my own. I'm sorry for everything. Daniel came to apologize to me afterward. He must have been scolded by Joseph, told to protect Miranda. Daniel promised he would protect me from now on.
All right. I'll forgive you for now, but make sure you do protect me.
I still had feelings for Daniel, and I didn't want to take the father away from the child I was carrying. So I decided to give it some time. Sorry for the sudden trouble. I'll be staying here from today.
It's okay. You must have had a hard time. Take it easy.
Not long after that, I went back to my parents' house to give birth. I moved back early to avoid Brittany's presence.
Pregnancy isn't an illness, and you're not even in the last month.
You can keep working as usual. Brittany contacted me like this after I came back from the hospital. It seemed she hadn't reflected on Joseph's anger. I told Daniel about it.
I got it. I'll talk to Mom.
But he did nothing. So, using my morning sickness as an excuse, I decided to take refuge at my parents' house early. I also talked to Joseph, who cared about me. I'm sorry for my family. Your decision isn't wrong, Miranda. Joseph accepted my decision. My parents welcomed me kindly, so I felt at ease at home.
Well, if that's your decision, I won't oppose it. Just have a healthy baby.
Daniel was surprised I moved back so early but sent me off like that. Brittany was the only one who opposed until the end.
Going back home this early,
she complained. But after what happened with Joseph glaring at her, she couldn't stop me.
The store will manage with the part-time workers. That's right. Just focus on the baby.
Christopher and Sarah also reassured me, so I focused solely on my unborn child. This was probably the most peaceful and happy time for me. Sure, the morning sickness was tough, but my growing belly filled me with love. And a few months later, I gave birth to my adorable son, Kent.
Thank you for being born, Kent.
I couldn't get enough of how cute Kent was. My parents were also crazy about Kent, and Sarah and Christopher were overjoyed. But Daniel seemed different.
Daniel, you haven't come to see him even once. Is he really that busy with work?
Yeah, it seems so. He never came to see me while I was at my parents' house. And that continued even after our baby was born. Hey, Daniel. Why haven't you come to see us? If this goes on, he won't develop a sense of responsibility as a father. Thinking that, I contacted Daniel.
I'm really busy with work. I'm truly sorry.
Daniel replied to my words like that. I sighed at him. What on earth is he doing? I decided I had to confront him when I got home. After a while, I returned home with Kent.
Welcome back, Miranda. And I've missed you, Kent.
Daniel greeted us with a smile and looked lovingly at Kent. Seeing that, I felt a bit remorseful. He did genuinely seem to love Kent. My work has settled down, so I'll be more hands-on from now on. Thanks to those words, we were able to enjoy some peaceful days for a while. But then Kent developed a sudden rash, and we had to go to the hospital.
What? Really?
Yes, that's correct. Kent's blood type is A. When we visited the hospital, we also checked his blood type, and it turned out Kent is type A. Both Daniel and I are type O. So I was utterly shocked, having assumed Kent would also be type O. Of course, I hadn't been unfaithful. Daniel was my only romantic experience. You went to the hospital today, right? How did it go?
The rash is getting better, but…
What? Did something happen? Daniel looked at me with a puzzled expression. I told him about Kent's blood type. He seemed surprised. Wow, I didn't know that could happen. At that moment, that was all Daniel said. He didn't seem to suspect me, so I was relieved.
I heard about it.
The next day, Brittany stormed in, saying that. Apparently, Daniel told Brittany what I had shared with him immediately. Brittany, having heard the story, barged in, suspecting I was cheating.
Giving birth to a child from an affair, you despicable woman.
No.
Daniel is the only one for me.
As Brittany raged, I glared at Daniel, who had talked without my consent and let her into the house. Daniel stood behind Brittany, looking flustered. Kent, startled by Brittany's shouting, began to cry.
Be quiet! Stop it, please!
As Brittany tried to lash out, I quickly picked up Kent to protect him. Brittany glared at me, clutching my belongings.
Get out of here with your child, you horrible woman!
She shouted, throwing my belongings at me. I looked at Daniel for help, but he just looked away awkwardly.
How dare you deceive my precious son? I have never cheated. This child is definitely Daniel's. Shut up! You're probably having an affair with that part-time worker Christopher too.
Her words made me furious. It was infuriating enough to be falsely accused of cheating, but to have my relationship with Christopher questioned too? I glared at Brittany.
I'll do a DNA test.
Fine, go ahead. Brittany smirked at my words.
Preparing evidence of your own infidelity, what a foolish woman.
Brittany laughed. I vowed to prove I was not cheating. Returning to my parents' house, I explained the situation to them.
Being accused so one-sidedly.
We believe in you, Miranda. My parents trusted me. When I mentioned a DNA test, they even offered to cover the cost. Oh. What's wrong? At that moment, someone contacted me. This person had heard the story and offered their help.
If they're helping, that's reassuring. I'll definitely get back at Brittany.
My anger toward Brittany fueled my determination.
I will make her regret this.
2 weeks later, after confirming the test results, I sent them to my in-laws. Let's see their reaction, I murmured, heading to Kent. A few hours later, Brittany must have seen the results. While my attention was elsewhere, I received numerous messages from Brittany on my smartphone.
What have you done?
When I answered the phone, her screams were the first thing I heard.
I just proved what you asked for. Don't mess with me.
Brittany continued to hurl insults at me. This wasn't getting anywhere. I decided to leave Kent with my parents and confront my in-laws. I'll go too. I can't forgive anyone who hurts my friend.
I'm coming as well.
Sarah and Christopher joined me along the way. I had told Sarah beforehand and informed her of our plan to confront them. So, the three of us headed to my in-laws.
Excuse us. How dare you show your face here?
Welcome, Miranda. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, Brittany was glaring at me with anger in her eyes, while Joseph greeted me warmly, and Daniel cowered in the corner. What are you angry about?
I just proved my innocence. This is all wrong. You must have altered it.
Brittany lamented, clutching the test results tightly in her hand. The results clearly stated that Kent was Daniel's son.
Can't you accept that even after seeing it? This can't be true.
For what it's worth.
I never had the time or opportunity to cheat on you, given how roughly you treated me.
In reality, I had been called to Brittany's side from early morning until Daniel came home at night. Even at work, Brittany's watchful eyes were always on me, leaving no chance for an affair.
I was also suspected of being the lover, but between my part-time job and studies, I barely had time to meet anyone outside the store. If you want, you can check. I mostly spent my time with friends or family.
Christopher declared confidently. Brittany fell silent at his words. Then Christopher turned his gaze to Daniel, who was quietly observing.
Why are you silent, Daniel? Huh? You were the one who asked Miranda to work at the store, right? Yet you ignored your wife being mistreated and even told your mother to attack her on your behalf. That's pretty cowardly.
Daniel averted his eyes and murmured.
That's not true.
This was the perfect moment. I'll voice my grievances.
You never help with the housework despite seeing how exhausted I am every day.
You relax on the couch until I prepare meals, never bothering to clean or do the laundry, but always complaining about the mess. And when I tell you to do it yourself, you always say you have to get up early and run to the bedroom. And you never do anything when I talk to you about Brittany.
You tattled to Brittany about Kent just to avoid her anger, didn't you? You're a coward, just like Christopher said. But
Daniel looked away, searching for an excuse. This man isn't kind at all. He just wants to avoid trouble.
I only agreed to help at the store because you asked me to. But with the salary and everything, I've had enough of you. What? Please, I'm really sorry.
Daniel finally looked panicked and apologized. I just got confused about Kent's blood type.
About that blood type, there's someone else who can explain it.
Daniel and Brittany looked puzzled at my words.
I'll explain that.
The person who answered was Joseph, who had been watching with a smile. He spoke in an unnervingly low voice. Something clicked in Brittany's mind, and she turned pale.
What's wrong, Mom?
Daniel was confused by Brittany's reaction. Ignoring them, Joseph pulled out a piece of paper. Is that a DNA test? Whose?
Mine and yours. What?
Yes, the paper was for Daniel and Joseph, and it stated that there was no biological relationship between them. Daniel was speechless as he read it.
I'm not your son.
The truth was, Daniel was not Joseph's child, but the child of Brittany's affair partner. The man Brittany was having an affair with turned out he had blood type A, so does Daniel. Brittany's screaming about Kent's test results was probably just her desperate attempt to cover up her affair.
No way, that's impossible.
Daniel, unaware of these facts, had always assumed he was blood type O since both his parents were.
Well, I've always had my doubts. What?
Joseph had long suspected Brittany of cheating and questioned if Daniel was truly his son.
But by then, Daniel was already 10 years old, and I had raised him with love.
So, I chose not to uncover the truth. However, when Joseph heard about me, he got angry, realizing Brittany had no right to speak, and decided to reveal the truth. He then contacted me, saying, "I'll handle the investigation, but I want you to do the DNA tests for us."
Investigation? To find out what you've been spending Miranda's salary on.
At those words, Daniel's face turned pale.
You've been dumping the store and housework on Miranda while having affairs. It's remarkable how similar you are to your mother.
Just as Joseph had suspected, Daniel had been cheating and using my salary to spoil his mistress. The investigation revealed that his mistress didn't even know Daniel was married. In other words, he had been deceiving both of us.
You will pay for this.
At my words, Daniel collapsed into a chair, powerless.
You, too, will face the consequences of your infidelity, and I'm divorcing you. I'll also be quitting my part-time job,
Joseph added, following my lead. Christopher then declared his decision as well. Brittany looked bewildered, asking why.
If both Miranda and Joseph are getting divorced, the store can't survive. You only cook. You don't handle any of the bookkeeping or administrative work.
Lately, even the cooking had been left to me and the part-time workers. Regular customers had noticed this and mentioned they came to support Miranda, who was working hard in Joseph's place. As a result, with me gone, the number of customers had decreased. If Joseph and I didn't return to the store, the remaining regulars would likely stop coming too. The store, supported by regulars and Miranda, will surely go under.
Everyone has sensed this and has been quitting their part-time jobs one by one. No!
Brittany started to panic as Christopher spoke. The store had been run by Brittany's family for generations.
I can't let it end with me. You won't get a divorce or quit the store, will you? Even with your family's help, finding a job while raising children will be tough.
Realizing the situation, Daniel turned to me with a trembling voice. Just then, Sarah stepped in front of me. Unfortunately, she's my excellent employee. So, I'll be taking responsibility for hiring her back. Before I quit my job, I had consulted Sarah, who arranged for me to return to the company at any time. So, finding a new job wasn't a problem.
I will never forgive you for hurting my best friend,
Sarah told Daniel with a smile. After that, Daniel and I successfully got divorced. Daniel pleaded not to get divorced and to stay with me and Kent until the very end, but Sarah's husband, a lawyer, helped us.
I made sure your husband would pay properly.
As she promised, Daniel paid a hefty amount in alimony and child support. It was all paid in a lump sum, allowing me to live comfortably for a while. Joseph also agreed to divorce without any property division in exchange for not claiming any compensation. Are you really okay with not asking for any compensation?
Yeah, it's fine. I've got enough savings, and Brittany is already finished no matter what.
Originally, his parents had been running the same store, but they had kept their finances strictly separate. Thanks to that, Joseph had been able to save up, but Brittany had been spending recklessly and had no savings. As a result, the only thing left for Brittany was that store. That store will probably go under soon.
when that happens, Brittany will have no choice but to rely on Daniel,"
Joseph said. And it became a reality. A while later, when I was talking with Sarah. "By the way, what happened with Daniel and the others?" "Oh, they contacted me." So, I talked about what happened to Daniel and the others. That store couldn't be managed properly without us, and it soon went under. All the regular customers left, and it went under in no time. In the end, they had to take on a lot of debt. Brittany ended up selling the store and the land to pay off the debt, taking only the bare minimum and running to Daniel. But Daniel has it tough too. In fact, his affair partner was a new employee at the company Daniel worked with. That new employee claimed to have been deceived and cried to others, spreading the story quickly. The story reached Daniel's company, and his boss subtly suggested he resign, leading him to voluntarily retire. So, they sold their house to repay the debt for alimony and child support and moved into a cheap apartment. He was getting by with a part-time job, but then Brittany showed up saying she was struggling.
"And then she asked you for help? After betraying her first? No way you'd help."
"Exactly. I refused immediately. Brittany sent a detailed message about her current situation, but I ignored it without replying. Thanks to that, I can now live peacefully. On the other hand, I have been raising Kent smoothly with the help of my parents. My housewife mother actively takes care of him, allowing me to raise him with peace of mind."
"I'm glad you're happy now. So, shall we talk about the future?"
We were meeting today to talk about the future. Kent still needs a lot of care, so I plan to start working remotely once he grows up a bit.
"I'm so glad Miranda is back. Your designs are popular and unique, something only you can create."
Sarah said such kind words to me. They have such high expectations for me. I decided to work hard once I returned to work. A few years later, when I started going back to work.
"Hello, Miranda. How is Kent?"
"Hello. He's been energetic since morning." Christopher visited the office. He always looks out for us and is fond of Kent. He had graduated from college and was now working hard as a salesperson at the same company with Sarah and me.
Miranda. I've always liked you. Will you go out with me?"
Christopher said, and I was surprised. As I stood there frozen in shock, he looked at me with serious eyes.
"I will make both you and Kent happy,"
Christopher said. But I was 5 years older than him. So, I couldn't answer right away and decided to put my reply on hold. Shortly after that,
"Miranda." "Huh? Daniel?"
Daniel appeared before me. Startled by the sudden encounter, I couldn't escape in time, and Daniel approached me with a smile.
"I've been looking for you. Hey, let's get back together. I can't take it anymore." "No way. Who do you think would want to get back together with you?"
I immediately rejected Daniel's words.
"You too. You're making fun of me too."
Then, as if his anger exploded, Daniel raised his fist towards me. At that moment,
"What do you think you're doing?"
Christopher stepped in between us and pulled me close. He glared at Daniel.
"Enough. Miranda doesn't need you anymore." "Shut up. What do you know about Miranda? Miranda, you still need me, right?"
"No, I don't. I have Christopher now." My words made Daniel look hurt.
"What the hell? So, you were cheating on me with Christopher all along?"
Both Christopher and I showed an exasperated expression. I had already told him that neither Christopher nor I had the time to cheat. Unlike you, I haven't cheated. I'm not even dating Christopher yet.
"Liar."
It's not a lie. I did confess recently,
but I haven't received an answer yet. Although my feelings were already decided. As I thought this, I squeezed Christopher's hand that was holding me. Christopher looked a bit surprised and then smiled happily. There's no room for you here. Or do you want me to call the police? At my words, Daniel said, "Damn," and left. It seemed he didn't want the police involved. About what you said earlier. You'll make both Kent and me happy, right? Christopher smiled and nodded at my words. And so, we started dating. After that, I asked Sarah's husband to get a restraining order against Daniel. Apparently, Daniel had gotten angry and kicked out Brittany because she was squandering his earnings and putting a strain on their life. But, feeling lonely by himself, he started looking for us. As for Brittany, she wandered without a place to go and eventually went missing. I don't care anymore. Because now, I'm happy. Miranda, it's time to go. Yes, I'm coming. Today is Kent's first day of school. Kent adores Christopher as his dad. And Christopher wholeheartedly reciprocates Kent's feelings. They look like a happy family from every angle. I'm really glad to have become part of this family. Thinking that, I headed towards them with a smile. Oh, if it isn't Emily. While looking at craft supplies in the department store with my husband Lucas, our son Aiden, and Aiden's wife Grace, someone called out from behind. Turning around, there stood Amelia, an old friend from high school, with a smile on her face. Amelia was holding the hand of a little boy. Amelia, it's been a while. Is this your grandson? Yes, this is Oliver, my lively 3-year-old grandson. Amelia squinted her eyes and gently patted her grandson's head. Oh, your grandson, Oliver, goes to the same childcare center as Emily's, doesn't he? Eh? We don't have any grandchildren yet. In front of Grace, who has difficulty having children. Please, let's not talk about grandchildren. Thinking this, I tried to change the subject. Eh? But that's your son, right? Amelia pointed at Aiden and said, Yes, that's our son Aiden. And this is his wife, Grace. Over there is my husband, Lucas. Everyone nodded to Amelia, but her gaze stayed fixed on Aiden. You pick up someone from Sunny Days Childcare, right? Amelia spoke to Aiden with a serious face. Aiden looked perplexed. Could it be a mistake? Aiden and Grace don't have any children yet. I tried to correct Amelia, but she shook her head. You sometimes pick up Mia, right? Oliver loves Mia and often talks about her at home. Mia? Who's that? Looking at Aiden, he started to tremble with his head down. Lucas and Grace looked at Aiden and Amelia with suspicion. Grandma, I need to go to the bathroom. Oh, we better hurry then. See you later. Pulled by Oliver, Amelia ran off towards the restroom. What's going on? Grace murmured in a tone I had never heard before, glaring at Aiden. Aiden remained silent with his head down. Returning home in silence, everyone except Aiden sat on the sofa. Aiden just stood near the living room door. Aiden, explain. Lucas's deep and stern voice filled the room. Finally, Aiden started talking. My name is Emily. I married Lucas, who is 5 years older than me, through a friend's introduction. When we were dating, I, who enjoy crafting, gave Lucas a pair of gloves I made myself for the first time as a present. Is this really handmade? Thank you. I'll cherish it, Lucas said, and from the next day, he began wearing the gloves to work. Half a year later, we got married, and Lucas continued to use the gloves I gave him for the next winter, and the winter after that. You've been using them for 3 years now. Let's get you a new pair. Then make me another pair. Since then,
Making gloves in Lucas's favorite pattern has become my event every few years. After our son Aiden was born, I started making matching gloves for Aiden as well.
It's nice to have the same as Dad. Yeah.
Aiden, who used to happily accept them, refused to wear his mom's handmade gloves when he became a middle schooler.
I don't need gloves.
It's not cold. Don't say that.
Mom's gloves are really warm.
Well, it's just that age.
It's enough if Lucas uses them.
Even though I stopped making gloves for Aiden, I continued to make them for Lucas. Aiden started living on his own when he went to college, and after getting a job, he began living an hour away from our house. We weren't on bad terms, but Aiden rarely contacted us, and he wouldn't come back to his parents' home unless we invited him. When Aiden was 23, he unexpectedly called. "Mom, I'm coming home this Sunday. Will Dad be there?"
Oh, what's up? Dad doesn't have any plans and should be home.
I'll be there around 2 p.m. I have someone I want to introduce. After saying that, Aiden hung up. Someone he wants to introduce?
Hey, Lucas.
My heart racing, I called for Lucas.
What's the matter? Why are you yelling?
Aiden said he's bringing someone he wants to introduce this Sunday. Lucas was momentarily surprised, but quickly cleared his throat and said,
Aiden's only 23, right? He's just getting used to work, and I'm not sure if he'll bring someone you're expecting, Emily.
Do you think so?
I have a feeling he'll bring a wonderful woman.
Despite Lucas's half-amused, half-exasperated reaction, I counted down the days to Sunday. And then the long-awaited Sunday arrived. After 2 p.m. passed and I was getting restless, I heard Aiden's voice from the entrance. "I'm home."
Welcome back.
Trying to appear calm, I went to the entrance and saw a petite, cute woman standing next to Aiden. "This is Grace, I'm dating her."
Nice to meet you. I've been seeing Aiden for a year now.
Nice to meet you. Please come in.
Dad's waiting in the living room.
Peeking into the living room, Lucas was unnaturally opening the newspaper, waiting for Grace to greet him.
Nice to meet you.
Make yourself at home. Lucas, clearly nervous as he stood up, was amusing to watch.
This is something I made, if you'd like.
Grace handed over a coaster.
It's beautiful. My favorite orange and Lucas's favorite blue. I asked Aiden about your favorite colors.
Looking closely at the coaster, initials were written on the edge. Grace, is crafting your hobby? I asked, feeling delighted.
Yes, I love crafting.
Grace smiled warmly.
I like it too. It's nice to have a hobby in common. It's not just a hobby. Grace is making a name for herself as a handmade artist.
I'm grateful to be able to make my hobby my work, Grace said with a smile. Perhaps the knit vest and earrings Grace was wearing were also handmade. Thinking that Grace's gentle aura came from wearing handmade items made me happy. We both love crafting, and that got us really excited. Grace shared all sorts of information about crafting supplies. Did you know this store has sales every 20th of the month? And on their website, they even sell yarns in colors like these.
You're a pro, Grace. Keep those tips coming.
Of course. While we were chatting, Lucas and Aiden were quietly listening in.
Sorry for hogging the conversation. I knew this would happen,
Aiden said with a laugh. Before we knew it, it was time for Aiden and his friend to leave.
Grace is such a nice person. I wish she'd marry soon.
That night, I couldn't help but gush to Lucas.
Can you believe Grace is the same age as Aiden, 23, and yet so mature? If she became Aiden's wife, I'd be relieved.
Lucas laughed as he said this, looking at me. What?
Aiden bringing someone who loves crafting. You must be special to him.
I was a bit shocked when he said he didn't need any more gloves, but I'm glad he appreciates handmade things. Both Lucas and I were looking forward to Aiden and Grace getting married. And as if they knew our wishes, their marriage discussions progressed rapidly, and they got married 6 months later. Aiden and Grace started living in an apartment 20 minutes away by car from us. Grace worked on her creations at home, handling everything from production to sales, and she seemed busy all the time. Even if it's a labor of love, it seemed hard. So, using the excuse of making too much food, I often brought dinner over to Aiden's place. Emily, thank you so much. I'm sorry I haven't been much of a wife since we got married. Grace looked apologetic. It's okay. Housework should be done by those who can. We're glad you live close by, so feel free to rely on us. After saying this, Grace expressed her gratitude. Thank you. I finally feel like my work is catching the wave, so I think now is the time to really push myself. Oh, Emily, good timing. Then Grace, from the back of the room, fetched a pair of new earrings to show me. Seeing Grace talk about her creations with such passion was dazzling, and I felt a renewed desire to support her. It's often said there's a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict, but that was foreign to us. We would go out to eat or shop together, and I thought of Grace, who shared my interests, as if she were my own daughter, and Grace had opened her heart to me. Of course, we had been living happily up until now, but becoming a family with Grace thanks to Aiden's marriage allowed me to spend my days in joy and fulfillment. 2 years flew by since they got married. They are both now 28. Aiden and Grace are doing well in their jobs, have a good relationship with each other, and get along with me and Lucas. While everything seems to be going well, the couple did not have children yet. Once, I asked Grace about having children. Then Grace apologized. I'm sorry. I took our youth for granted, but it turns out I have a condition that makes it hard to conceive. I know you're eager to see a grandchild, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry too. Don't stress too much about it. What I wish for the most is for Aiden and you to live happily. I had assumed they were prioritizing their careers over having children. To Grace, who was feeling anxious about not being able to conceive, what had I done by asking her that? For a while, I was tormented by self-loathing. Perhaps out of consideration for me, Grace invited me to lunch again as if nothing had happened.
When I do get pregnant, you'll be the first to know.
Grace said this with a bright smile. Grace is much more grown-up than I am. Since then, I never brought up the topic of children with Aiden or Grace again. One day, I got a call from Grace.
Emily, there's a new craft store in the next town over. Do you want to go check it out with me?
Thanks for the invite. I'd love to go. The next day, we headed to the new craft store. Can we stop by the department store too? I'm thinking of buying Aiden's birthday present. Oh right, Aiden's birthday is the day after tomorrow. It's so nice of her to prepare a birthday present for Aiden. He's lucky. Hearing Grace's words, I decided to buy something for Aiden as well. After we both bought presents for Aiden, we were hungry, so we went to a cafe. While eating cake, Grace had a bright idea.
How about we throw a surprise party for Aiden's birthday, if it's convenient for you and Lucas?
That sounds great. Let's do it at our house. I'm free during the day, so I can prepare the food and everything.
Thank you. I'll get off work early and help with the preparations.
Thinking back, even though I've sent Aiden birthday texts since he moved out, we haven't celebrated in person in over 10 years. Just the thought of a surprise party was exciting. Aiden really married someone wonderful. And thank you, Grace, for caring so much for Aiden. I watched Grace innocently enjoying her cake with a smile. By the way, Aiden has been busy with work lately and coming home late.
Is that so? Will he be able to come home early the day after tomorrow?
We were worried. I'll ask him subtly, so he doesn't suspect anything.
Thanks. Let me know if you need anything, Grace. You're busy too. After that, we went shopping for party supplies like wine and food, and then parted ways.
2 days flew by, and today is Aiden's birthday. I sent Aiden a happy birthday message in the morning. According to Grace, he shouldn't be too late today, so I started preparing for the party right away.
Lucas, we're having Aiden's birthday party today, so come home early, okay?
You're really going all out, aren't you? Lucas laughed, looking at the garlands I was arranging on the table for decoration.
Well, it's been over 10 years since we've had a party for Aiden's birthday.
Are you making the cake, Emily?
That's the plan.
I can't wait. Aiden loves your cakes. With that, Lucas left for work. Aiden, who doesn't like whipped cream, always had my homemade cheesecake. He was always so happy when I decorated the cake with icing cookies of his favorite character, bringing back those memories. Today, I have to make sure we give him a big surprise. I'm getting really excited. I checked my phone from time to time while preparing, but there was no reply from Aiden. I wonder if he's that busy with work. Even though I was worried, I continued with the food preparations. Around 4 p.m., Grace arrived at our house.
Sorry I'm late. Wow, it smells great. Do you think so? Isn't it a bit childish?
On top of the baked cheesecake, I had decorated it with icing cookies of a character Aiden used to love. Grace looked at the cake and smiled.
Aiden still has this character's figure on display. He'll absolutely love this. Really? Hasn't grown up at all, has he?
With that, we laughed.
Let's get everything ready at once.
We split up the tasks, some of us cooking and others decorating the room. By 6 p.m., Lucas came home. In Lucas's hand was a paper bag tied with a ribbon.
Lucas prepared a gift, too.
I'd feel left out if I didn't.
I hope Aiden gets back soon.
I sent Aiden a message, but no reply yet. He must be rushing to finish up work. Everything was ready. All that was left was waiting for the guest of honor. The three of us watched TV and chatted while waiting for Aiden to return. But no matter how long we waited, Aiden didn't come back.
It's already 8 p.m. I'll give him a call.
Grace tried calling, but Aiden didn't answer the phone. However, Aiden called back shortly after. Talking to Aiden, Grace's face suddenly turned gloomy. After hanging up, Grace let out a big sigh and said, "I'm sorry. Aiden has to stay at the office tonight."
What?
It was such a surprise that he had to stay at the office on this particular day. "I'm sorry. After you all prepared so much." Grace looked down apologetically. Seeing Grace like this, Lucas cleared his throat and said, "It's his job, can't be helped. He's 29 now, entrusted with responsible tasks."
You're right. I'm glad he's grown into such a respectable adult. Let's reschedule the party. You must be hungry, right? Let's eat.
Though it was disappointing that the guest of honor wasn't there, the three of us still enjoyed the delicious food and cake, having a reasonably good time. My gaze drifted to the three presents lying on the sofa. "I want to give Aiden his birthday presents. You free on the weekend?"
Sometimes I have to work on Saturdays, but Sundays are always off for me. Let me ask.
Grace texted Aiden, and a reply came quickly.
Aiden says Sunday seems fine. Told them it's a surprise, So we're going out for a meal with the four of us.
Thank you. Let's celebrate grandly this time. I can picture Aiden's embarrassed face when he receives his present. I know a place with a great atmosphere where I went with my colleagues. I'll book it.
Thank you.
I couldn't wait for next Sunday. And then, the Sunday of the birthday party redo. At 10 a.m., Aiden and Grace came to pick us up. Is it okay if we stop by a department store near the restaurant? There's something I want to buy.
Our reservation is at 12 p.m., so let's go to the department store first.
So, we decided to stop by the department store before our meal.
Oh, if it isn't Emily.
While looking at craft supplies, someone called out from behind. Turning around, there stood Amelia, a friend from high school. Smiling with a little boy holding her hand.
Amelia, long time no see. Is this your grandson?
Yes. This energetic little guy is Oliver, he's 3. Amelia squinted her eyes and gently patted her grandson's head. Emily, your grandson is in the same childcare center as Oliver, right?
Aw. We don't have any grandchildren yet.
I hoped Amelia would drop the subject of grandchildren, not wanting Grace to feel uncomfortable.
Wait, but that's your son, right?
Amelia pointed at Aiden. Yes. This is our son Aiden, and this is his wife Grace. And this is my husband Lucas. Everyone nodded to Amelia, but her gaze stayed on Aiden.
You're picking up from Sunny Day's childcare, aren't you?
Amelia spoke to Aiden with a serious face. Aiden looked puzzled. Could it be a mistake? Aiden and Grace don't have any children yet. I tried to reason with Amelia, but she shook her head.
Sometimes they come to pick up Mia, right? My Oliver, he adores Mia, talks about her all the time at home.
Who's Mia? Looking at Aiden, he began to tremble, looking down. Lucas and Grace also watched Aiden and Amelia with a puzzled look.
Grandma, I need to go to the bathroom. Oh, we better hurry then. See you later.
Pulled by Oliver, Amelia ran off towards the bathroom. A tense silence fell over us who were left behind.
What's going on?
Grace murmured at Aiden with a voice lower than I've ever heard, glaring at him. Aiden, still looking down, said nothing. Lucas took out his phone and started making a call. I'm sorry, due to some circumstances, we have to cancel. We will definitely pay the cancellation fee later. Lucas apologized repeatedly and hung up the phone. Make sure to pay the cancellation fee to the store, Lucas said to Aiden and started walking. I followed behind Lucas, then Grace, and Aiden trailed behind us, keeping his distance. We returned home in silence, and everyone but Aiden sat on the couch. Aiden just stood near the living room door.
Aiden, explain yourself.
Lucas's deep and firm voice filled the room. Aiden remained silent, looking down. Lucas stood in front of Aiden.
Hand over your mobile phone now.
Aiden stared at Lucas's outstretched hand.
Hurry.
Overwhelmed by Lucas's presence, Aiden, with tears in his eyes, handed over his mobile phone. Lucas fiddled with Aiden's mobile phone for a while, sighed deeply, and for a moment, turned a pained expression our way. Lucas, let me see too. With a resolved look, Grace approached Lucas and extended her hand. I'm sorry. With those words, Lucas handed Aiden's mobile phone to her. Grace kept fiddling with his mobile phone, expressionless. Then, still without showing any emotion, tears started to roll down Grace's cheeks. Seeing those tears made both Lucas and I feel terribly uncomfortable.
Who is this Harper woman exactly? Explain it with your own words.
Finally, Aiden, who had been silent all along, began to speak.
What Mom's friend said is true.
And what about this Mia?
She's my child with Harper.
The moment Aiden's words were spoken, Grace burst into tears. I hugged Grace, rubbing her back while glaring at Aiden.
How old is this Mia? How long have you been cheating?
Lucas bombarded Aiden with one question after another, causing him to hang his head in shame. According to Aiden, Harper, the woman he cheated with, is a 25-year-old office worker and a college friend. He had been involved with Harper before meeting Grace, and the relationship continued even after he started dating Grace. It seems he thought about stopping the affair once he got married, but that's when Harper's pregnancy came to light. Harper had told him there was no need to marry, but then demanded hospital fees, and after the child was born, she started calling him over to take care of the child. From what was said, it seemed like Aiden was just being conveniently used by Harper, but creating a child with an affair partner in the first place is utterly inexcusable. I also felt responsible for raising Aiden to end up in such a situation. The money you've been giving Harper, it's coming from my savings, isn't it? Grace muttered.
Is that true?
Aiden, under Grace's stern gaze, nodded guiltily. Creating a child with an affair partner and then stealing Grace's money to give to her. This reality, far beyond imagination, almost made me collapse.
So, the reason you've been coming home late recently is because you've been busy with that other family?
Aiden didn't deny Grace's words.
Recently, Harper has been coming home late, and I've been asked to pick up Mia.
Since Harper started working full-time this year, I've been picking up Mia more often as a substitute.
During your last birthday, you were with this family, weren't you?
Sorry. Aiden apologized, but we couldn't possibly forgive him for that. Lucas furiously threw the birthday present into the trash can.
From now on, stay away from us. Get out of here.
Oh no. Both Lucas and I, along with Grace, quietly endured until Aiden left. After a while, Aiden said, "I'm really sorry," and left. As soon as the front door closed, I stood up and deeply apologized to Grace. Lucas came right next to me and apologized in the same way. "I'm really sorry for the foolish thing Aiden did."
It's not your fault, Lucas and Emily. Rather, thank you for being with me. If I had been alone when I found out about this, I think I would have broken down.
Grace's words pierced my heart.
You're going to divorce Aiden, aren't you?
Yes, I will divorce him. Grace looked into our eyes and answered clearly. We firmly accepted her answer.
I know a great lawyer. I'll introduce you to him, so make sure to claim your compensation in the divorce proceedings.
Grace was surprised by Lucas's words.
Grace, even if you divorce Aiden, we'll always consider you our daughter. Please rely on us if you need anything.
Hearing my words, Grace's eyes filled with tears and she said,
Lucas, Emily, I was able to have a wonderful time because I met you too. Thank you.
Grace's life changed drastically in just a few hours, but we solemnly vowed to continue watching over her. Grace promptly started the divorce proceedings with the lawyer Lucas introduced. In the divorce settlement, in addition to the alimony, it was agreed that Aiden would pay Grace $30,000, combining this with the money Aiden had unilaterally spent from Grace's savings. Furthermore, initially, Grace did not intend to claim any settlement money from Harper, who was in the midst of parenting, but eventually decided to claim $10,000.
Did something happen?
Because the child is innocent, I thought it would be better for him to spend the money on the child rather than pay me. But then she claimed that she, being the mother of the child, was the rightful wife. It seems Grace's anger finally erupted at Harper, who showed no remorse.
I didn't hesitate to claim it.
To think that Aiden had an affair with such a person. Grace felt anew that forgiving Aiden was indeed impossible. Thanks to her lawyer, Grace was able to smoothly receive the settlement money from both Aiden and Harper, and then proceed with the divorce. Aiden chose to live with Harper and Mia, while Grace moved to a different place.
Come visit us anytime. We think of you as our daughter.
On the day before the move, I conveyed this to Grace, who had come to say goodbye.
Thank you so much for everything. I'll be in touch.
Grace was a bit nervous, but she showed her best smile at the end. I figured the promise to contact us was probably just a polite formality. That's what I thought somehow. It's understandable. Even if she doesn't hate us, seeing us would unavoidably remind her of Aiden, who betrayed her.
Even if we can't see you anymore, we will always wish for your happiness.
I whispered quietly as I watched Grace's retreating figure. And then a year later. I haven't been in contact with Aiden, whom I disowned, but rumors say he officially married Harper half a year ago. However, as soon as they married, Harper quit her job without consulting anyone and became a housewife. Moreover, with Harper's spending habits controlling the finances, they were forced into a poor lifestyle, and it seems their marital relationship is already at its worst. Despite hearing such stories, I felt no sympathy for Aiden. More importantly,
should be arriving soon, right?
Calm down a bit, Emily.
Even Lucas has been glancing at the clock nonstop.
At that moment, the doorbell rang. Hello. We headed to the entrance, maintaining our composure. There stood Grace.
Happy birthday, Grace.
Thank you. Something smells good. Grace laughed. Today is Grace's birthday. She came over after we invited her for a party. The words Grace had said a year ago weren't just pleasantries after all. A while later, Grace contacted us saying, "Shall we go buy some crafting supplies?" Grace continued to treat Lucas and me as before, which was a relief to us, and Lucas was happy to have a daughter in place of a son. I made your favorite tiramisu.
I can't wait to eat it.
Grace cheered.
Grace, if you'd like, here's this for you.
Lucas handed Grace a small bag.
What is it? Let me open it. Wow, how cute!
Grace cheered again. Out of the bag came a pink bear plushie.
Did Lucas make this?
Lucas nodded, somewhat embarrassed. Actually, a month ago, Lucas came to me with my crafting book and asked,
"Think I can make this?"
Without him saying anything, I knew it was meant to be a gift for Grace. For a month, with my advice, Lucas crafted this pink bear plushie. The differing sizes of the ears on either side made it all the more endearing.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy.
Seeing Grace's gentle smile, both Lucas and I felt incredibly happy. Of course, Mom and Dad get the biggest room. If you defy that, it's divorce, remember? You're my wife, so don't you dare defy us. Oscar jests.
You should be fine with the storage room. Giving you a big room is just a waste.
Grace adds with a chuckle. Considering we're letting someone else live under our roof, you should just be grateful for that. Marshall remarks humorously. The words of my husband Oscar, mother-in-law Grace, and father-in-law Marshall leave me feeling dizzy. It's true that Oscar and his parents have stubbornly refused to accept me as family, subjecting me to cruel treatment. But this is too much. After all, I was the one who found this house. Despite their numerous requests to move, they did nothing. So, at the end of my patience, I took time out of my busy work schedule to visit a real estate agent and found us a good home. Yet, they act as if it's only natural for me to devote myself to them. They believe I'm not even family and I should just be grateful for being allowed to live in the same house with them. I can't keep trying anymore. I've strived to become a true part of the family. But at this moment, I've reached the end of my tether. My name is Jessica, a 38-year-old housewife. I live with my husband. I met Oscar through a friend's introduction. After a relentless pursuit from Oscar, we started dating. And from there, everything progressed smoothly to marriage. After our wedding, we moved close to his parents' home. The move was spurred by the news of Marshall hurting his back. While Marshall wasn't in need of constant care, his mobility was limited enough to require assistance for longer trips. So we settled nearby in-laws' house to give them a ride when they needed and visit them regularly to check in. Initially, my in-laws seemed appreciative of our efforts. As Oscar's wife, I wanted to support them. With that sentiment, I did what I could while juggling a busy work schedule. However, as time passed, my in-laws' attitude drastically changed.
Jessica, when are you going to quit your job? A married woman working, it's hurting Oscar's reputation. Why not just quit and become a housewife?
They suggested. My in-laws had always seemed dissatisfied with my continued work post-marriage. Perhaps in their time, it was the norm for a married woman to quit her job. But such a mindset is painfully outdated.
Grace, these days, it's perfectly acceptable for married women to continue working. You know, retirement inevitably requires money, right? I want to keep working to ensure we don't face hardships in the future.
I earnestly respond to Grace's words. As we age, living off a pension alone becomes an increasingly difficult proposition. That's why I believe it's important to work and save while we still can.
But Jessica, isn't it because you're working that you and Oscar don't have time for intimacy? You're already 38 and he has crossed 40. It's troubling for us if you can't even provide a grandchild.
She argues. It's true that we don't have children. But it's not for a lack of trying. We've done what we could, and yet here we are. Harsh words and cold glances from my in-laws leave me feeling terribly uncomfortable. Could it be that I'm the one at fault? Should I have quit my job and focused on starting a family? I feel restless, troubled by the thought that I might be doing something wrong. It was around this time that my in-laws' behavior noticeably deteriorated. They treated me as if I wasn't part of the family. And this attitude, like a contagious disease, spread to Oscar as well. Initially, the changes were minimal. Ignoring my attempts to communicate, or Oscar and his parents going on trips without me. I questioned such actions, but thinking it unwise to dwell on them too much, I let them be. That only led to worse behavior. Returning from work one day, I found Oscar drinking in the living room. Not wanting to disturb his evening ritual, I quietly entered and started tending to some household chores. Then he let out a heavy sigh.
What's this about you leaving the house empty till this hour because of work? Mom, even when she was tired from chores, was always by my side at this time, never making me feel lonely. A wife that makes her husband feel lonely is failing her role.
He lamented. He often compared me to Grace. Every time I made a mistake, he would point out how Grace would have done it, lecturing me on how inadequate I was as a wife. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely. I'll be more mindful from now on. I replied. Challenging Oscar in these moments only led to more intense anger and worse situations. Drawing from past experiences, I refrained from arguing and quickly apologized. Perhaps my action was interpreted as an admission of guilt, as he continued with even harsher words.
Listen, the only reason you can still work is that Mom and Dad are kind. But I won't be as kind to you like them. Quit your job quickly and become a housewife. It's time to stop being so selfish.
I've been told to quit my job time and again. Why do I have to hear such things? I'm working with the future in mind, so why must that be dismissed? He really seems to dislike that I don't conform to his wishes. Sometimes, I even feel like I'm not treated as part of the family. But still, I've persevered. In the midst of these challenging days, he came up with a suggestion. He wanted us to live with his parents.
They won't stay healthy forever, right? They might get injured while we're away. To be there for them immediately if that happens, I think living together is necessary.
This single statement moved his parents, proud of their thoughtful son. But for me, it felt like just another source of distress was being added to my life. And to make matters worse, although they spoke of wanting to live together, they never took any action to make it happen. It was always left up to me.
You're always so unhelpful, so the least you could do is make an effort for the family.
Oscar said. He instructed me to find time amidst my busy work schedule to visit real estate agents and look for a house suitable for us to live together. Honestly, it was a particularly busy period for me, and finding the time was a real struggle. But somehow, I managed and found a potential property. When I showed the details to them, their reaction was surprisingly positive. We decided to visit the house that weekend. I managed to take a day off work for it.
It's really spacious and nice. I think Mom and Dad can really relax in this house,
he remarked. Guided by the real estate agent, we walked through the house. The house was large enough to offer a room for each of the four of us, with spare rooms for guests. While checking out each room, Oscar and his parents discussed what each room could be used for. I trailed behind, quietly observing their excited chatter. It seemed we had finished touring the last room. They seemed convinced by the house after the viewing. I felt relieved, thinking the move might go smoothly after all. But reality was far more cruel.
Of course, Mom and Dad get the biggest room. Defy that and it's divorce, remember? You're my wife, so don't you dare defy us,
Oscar said, startling me. His utter disregard for me and his selfish decision-making for his parents left me stunned. Then, as if to add insult to injury, Grace chimed in.
You should be fine with the storage room. Giving you a big room is just a waste.
And then Marshall continued, reinforcing their words.
Being grateful for letting an outsider live in the same house, that's the least you can do.
He adds, divorce threats, being told the storage room is enough, and being called an outsider. These words, unthinkable from a family, make my head spin. I had a feeling, but now it's clear, I was never truly seen as family. After all the effort I put into finding a house for them. And yet, to be treated like this is unimaginable. The anger I had kept deep inside is now surging to the surface. I can't keep trying for them anymore. In fact, I feel an urge to make them thoroughly regret taking my feelings for granted. With that resolve, I decided to rebel against their selfishness. Unaware of my feelings, they were excited about the new house. Taking a deep breath to calm myself, I spoke my mind.
Then it's divorce. I found that house in between my busy work schedule, and this is how you treat me? I've reached my limit. I can't be part of this family anymore.
I stated it clearly. Continuing as a family with them was absolutely impossible. I had reached my breaking point. Then,
what?
At my words, they could only utter. Oscar, in particular, was so shocked that his face turned pale.
Jessica, are you serious? Who else would accept someone as worthless as you other than him? If you divorce here, you might end up alone forever,
Grace said. Calling someone worthless, that's what I'd like to say to them. Who has been trying hard for them all this time? They seem to have forgotten all that, and I couldn't help but sigh. Whatever, do what you want.
I never accepted you as family anyway. If you're going to leave, I'd prefer you do it quickly, Marshall stated.
Even after getting married, he stubbornly refused to accept me as family. Perhaps that's why he seems okay with the idea of divorce. It's almost a relief that he's not trying to stop me unnecessarily. The in-laws didn't try to hold me back. Only Oscar seemed somewhat uneasy, but having brought up divorce first, he seemed unable to say anything and just shifted his gaze uncomfortably. Taking their lack of resistance as an opportunity, I started preparing to leave the house. For the time being, it looks like I'll be staying in a weekly rental apartment. The thought of finally being free from the troubles named Oscar and his parents made me feel a sense of liberation. As I finished packing my things and was about to leave the house the next day, I thrust the divorce papers in front of Oscar. Of course, I'm fully intent on divorcing, so I had filled out everything in advance, leaving only the part for him to complete. Hearing the news, the in-laws also came to our house. Despite their calling me ungrateful upon seeing my determination to divorce, I won't be family anymore, so their petty remarks no longer matter to me.
Are you really going through with a divorce? You can still change your mind,
Oscar finally spoke. But he hesitated to sign the divorce papers, leaving me in a bind. We continued living under the same roof for a while, but as time passed, his behavior changed, frequently questioning if this was really what I wanted. Honestly, this is nothing but a hassle.
Yes, I really intend to divorce. What, getting cold feet now? Forgotten what you've done? After behaving like that, you don't get to say you don't want a divorce now.
I say firmly. His behavior almost seems like he doesn't want a divorce. But such an attitude is inconvenient for me. I've been looking forward to this day, to be freed from them. And I don't want to waste any more time here. Questioning his indecision, Grace raises her voice.
He wouldn't get cold feet over something like this. Even with a woman as worthless as you, kind-hearted Oscar can't just abandon you. Oh, poor thing. You shouldn't bother yourself with such a woman.
With that, Grace strokes his back. But his expression only grows more severe. I sense that Grace's words are only pushing Oscar further to the edge, but I keep that to myself and just smile.
Right. Oscar wouldn't say he doesn't want a divorce now, after he initiated it. You really know him well, Grace.
I say, my words dripping with irony because I know full well that Grace doesn't understand his feelings at all.
Yeah, that's right.
Oscar nods in a shaky voice. At this point, there's no escaping. The in-laws' eyes are fixed on him, making sure he doesn't back out. So, without rushing him, I wait for him to fill out the divorce papers.
Oscar, just sign it already. There's no need to spend another moment with such an ungrateful woman. Kick her out and start living with just the family. You need to hurry up with the new house too, or someone else might take it.
Marshall urges. Even after deciding on our divorce, Oscar and his parents prepared for moving into the new house. Especially the in-laws, they were so eager to live in that house. They had even spoken to the real estate agent about buying it. The house's ownership will likely be in Oscar's name. The in-laws, already living on pensions, certainly can't afford to pay a mortgage. From now on, Oscar will have to support his parents all by himself.
Marshall's right. Once Oscar signs, it's all over. You can get rid of a wife who wouldn't become a housewife and was too absorbed in her work. So hurry up and sign.
I press, growing impatient with the delay. Oscar hesitates, but when Marshall adds pressure with a stern
Oscar?
He can't resist and shakily signs the divorce papers.
Now we can kick out an outsider,
Grace says, smiling happily at the fully filled out divorce papers. Marshall praises Oscar, well done, but his face remains pale throughout. I understand why he looks so troubled. The in-laws may be pleased with my divorce from him, but the truth is, the divorce will put him in a difficult situation. At that moment, Oscar had uttered the word divorce in a burst of impulse, never truly intending to go through with it. It was meant only as a threat to me. He probably never imagined I would take the divorce talk seriously. And yet, here we are, with the divorce papers signed, and he is overwhelmed with uncertainty about the future. However, his parents, oblivious to these circumstances, kept pressing him to go through with the divorce. Caught between his parents' demands, he had been troubled up to this day. Now that he has signed the divorce papers, we are strangers to each other. The future life of them is of no concern to me. But seeing him, pale-faced and forcing a smile for his parents, looking utterly miserable, I felt a pang of pity. Maybe it's time to give his parents a dose of reality. With that thought, I took action. I pulled out several documents from the cabinet and laid them out in front of his parents.
Here are Oscar's pay slips for the last year. It's a good opportunity to face the reality.
The documents reveal his earnings over the past year. Seeing them, his parents gasp.
What? Oscar, what's this about? Why is your salary so low?
Indeed, his pay slips show a meager monthly income of around $1,000. It's a very low income. The reason lies in his educational background. He is a high school graduate, and he holds no qualifications. Moreover, he's not the type to concentrate for long periods, struggling to commit to extensive work hours. The jobs available to someone like him are quite limited. The company he's currently working for offers very low compensation. I had repeatedly suggested he change jobs, but perhaps lacking confidence in securing another position, he continually refused the idea. Living on a monthly income of $1,000 is extremely challenging. Fortunately, I was blessed with a good job. Having graduated from university and landed a job at a top company, I'm now in a managerial position. Hence, my salary is more than enough for daily life. You might realize by now, but had we not divorced, I would have been the one to own the new house. Oscar's salary is insufficient for mortgage payments. But with the divorce, I won't be living in that house, so there's no need for me to pay the mortgage. In essence, with a meager salary of $1,000 per month, Oscar will have to cover the mortgage and living expenses on his own. Of course, I'm the owner of the house we're living in now. After leaving the weekly rental apartment, I plan to sell this house and evict Oscar. Oscar himself seemed to realize this at some point. But his parents, oblivious to the dire situation Oscar was in, only continued to put pressure on him.
Oscar, say it's not true. Jessica is lying, right? It's impossible that Oscar has such a low income.
Grace shouted, refusing to accept reality, grabbing Oscar's shoulder in anger. Normally, if parents learn their son is in a terrible situation, they would try to support him. However, Grace, holding on to an overly grand illusion of Oscar, couldn't face the reality I presented and kept imposing her ideals. Marshall, overwhelmed by the stark truth, remained silent. Under the intense scrutiny of his parents, Oscar finally snapped,
"Enough already,"
and slumped down on the spot. Grace looked at Oscar with concern.
"Jessica, please forgive us. We were wrong. I've been thinking these past few days, and no matter how I look at it, we can't live without you. If you're angry about what was said, I'll apologize as many times as it takes. Please, forgive us,"
Oscar said, offering a profound apology. His desperate attempt to make me stay almost made me laugh. Seeing my reaction, the in-laws seemed irritated but, recognizing their position, they apologized on the spot. "Jessica, please. Don't abandon us. We don't want to see Oscar suffer anymore. We apologize for what we did. So please, reconsider. It's not too late," Grace pleaded, apologizing next to Oscar. Marshall, perhaps influenced by her, also said, "Please," and apologized. After being ridiculed and subjected to harsh words, this scene of all three apologizing simultaneously was quite a spectacle. I felt a sense of clarity, as if something long lodged in my chest had been cleared. But my resolve was firm. I truly felt that I couldn't forgive these three. Even if I forgave them now, there's no guarantee the same situation wouldn't happen again. Perhaps their behavior could become even worse. And more than anything, I no longer had the desire to continue as a family with them. The urge to be freed from these three and to live my own life was much stronger. That's why, no matter how much they tried to stop me, my decision didn't waver.
"Sorry, but it's already decided. No matter what you say, I'm going to submit this divorce application. If you really don't like it, let's hire lawyers and discuss it further,"
I said, taking the divorce papers and returning to my room. After that, I could hear them arguing in the living room, but I ignored it and took the time to rest, preparing for the next day. The following early morning, I left the house with the luggage I had packed in advance. It was fortunate that I didn't have to face Oscar even once, and so, I was freed from these troublesome people. The divorce application was successfully processed. However, what became more contentious was the issue of alimony. I wasn't interested in receiving any alimony, for I was satisfied as long as I can get divorced. But Oscar, perhaps trying to squeeze every penny he could from me, demanded $100,000 in alimony, concocting some plausible reason like my alleged infidelity. Of course, there was no truth to such claims, so his demands didn't stand. I heard from a friend about what happened afterward. Following that incident, Oscar and his parents reportedly had a significant falling out. After I sold the house, Oscar was evicted and had to move in with his parents. But, shocked by the turn of events, he quit his job and started relying on his parents, which infuriated them. Now, he is said to be living alone in an apartment after being kicked out of his parents' house. He seems to be desperately trying to get in touch with me, reaching out to mutual friends haphazardly. It's utterly bothersome, but I have no intention of communicating with him, so I've taken the precaution of asking friends not to share my contact information. Dealing with him has been a headache, but even so, I am happy now. Having severed ties with him and his parents, I've embraced a life of freedom. My current environment, where I can focus entirely on my work, seems to suit me well. After all that has happened, I'm not keen on married life for a while. For the time being, I plan to cherish the time spent with friends and live each day to the fullest. In this long life ahead, I want to live for myself.
A wife who neglects her housework is not needed in this house, right? Such a useless woman does not deserve to be my son's wife. Leave this house!
Chloe, my mother-in-law, said this to me, and with a smile, I replied, "Understood." I left the house and went back to my parents' home. Probably Chloe will storm into my parents' home. I don't know what will happen to me from now on. I am Sophia, a 25-year-old housewife. I married Timothy last year and have been living a smooth life. Except for one thing, Chloe's presence makes our newlywed life less peaceful. Chloe is a son-obsessed, clingy mother. Especially since Timothy is an only child. We live at a medium distance and meet only a few times a year. Whenever I see Chloe, she annoyingly checks whether I am taking good care of Timothy. Last time we met, "You're taking care of Timothy properly, right? Listen, Timothy loves meat and hates fish. You remember that, right? I remember you said during our first meeting that your favorite dish to cook is fish stew. If you're serving Timothy the same thing, I won't let it slide," she said. Chloe seems desperate to make sure I am doing my household duties and making meals that Timothy enjoys. Timothy loves the fish stew I make, and we have never had any trouble with meals. I can let it go, but she looked at my clothes, saying, "You're dressed so inappropriately. When standing beside Timothy, you should dress to match him. A short skirt? How vulgar. Are you trying to tempt other men?" I was utterly baffled. My skirt was knee-length and quite modest. Timothy has a simple style, and my outfit that day matched his. It seemed Chloe didn't want me to outshine Timothy. "When you two are together, everyone's eyes go to Sophia. It's because of the bright colors of your clothes. From now on, wear a white shirt and black pants. Don't wear anything else." Chloe, beaming as if she had a great idea, got a wry smile from me. Thankfully, Timothy stood up for me. "What are you talking about, Mom? I think Sophia is cute no matter what she wears, and she should wear what she likes. Stop hassling her with your weird demands." Saying. Chloe often comes up with these nonsensical requests. On the other hand, my father-in-law is harmless but doesn't contribute positively either. He always seems preoccupied, either reading the newspaper or watching news on TV, never joining in our conversations. He turned a blind eye to whatever Chloe said to me, right in front of him. I've tried to talk to him several times since getting married. But because he shows no interest in chatting, the conversation dies down quickly. Honestly, visiting my in-laws has always been a burdensome event for me. Then one day, I started feeling unwell and couldn't manage the household chores. I thought my headache and slight fever would pass, but Timothy was worried and decided we should visit a doctor the next day. It was a Saturday, and Timothy had the day off. Our usual clinic was only open in the morning on Saturdays. The doctor asked if I could be pregnant, and I remembered my period was late. "Maybe I am pregnant," I said, and took a pregnancy test right there. The result was positive. We immediately visited a nearby gynecologist, and it was confirmed I was pregnant. Timothy and I were overjoyed. Especially Timothy, with tears streaming down his face. "Sophia, thank you." He kept thanking me over and over again. But when we reported the pregnancy to our parents, Chloe showed up at our house carrying a huge bag. I was suffering from severe morning sickness and was holed up in the bathroom, unable to come out. As the doorbell was repeatedly rung, I hurried out of the bathroom to answer it, and there was Chloe. "Chloe? You were trying to pretend you weren't home, weren't you?" "No, I was just in the bathroom." "I don't care, just let me in." I staggered to the door and opened it. Chloe was holding a large Boston bag, and I had a bad feeling. "We're going to live together until the baby grows up." I was stunned by Chloe's sudden words. I couldn't just leave her at the entrance, so I let her into the house. "I'll make some coffee," I said, and headed to the kitchen, and called Timothy while waiting for the water to boil. It was a weekday afternoon, and Timothy was at work as usual. I was worried if he would answer, but he did after a few rings. "Sophia? Is something wrong?" "Hey, Chloe came over. She's carrying a big bag. Do you know anything?" "Eh? I haven't heard anything. But she said she would come by soon. I never thought she'd come when I'm not home." "I see. I'll ask Chloe for the details." "Sorry." If mom says something weird, you can kick her out. Oh, sorry, I have to hang up. Timothy seemed busy and hung up. As if I can just kick her out because she says something weird. He really doesn't get it. I sighed a little. Timothy is generally kind and cherishes me, but he doesn't think through the consequences of prioritizing my wishes. I can imagine the uproar Chloe would make if I tried to kick her out. For now, I just prepared the coffee and served it to Chloe. Chloe, what brings you here today? Timothy is at work. He'll be home around 6 p.m. This doesn't look good. What? Confused by Chloe's sudden remark, I watched as she took a sip of the coffee I had prepared. Ah, young people are hopeless. They can't even make a decent cup of coffee. Poor Timothy, having to drink this. I'll teach you how to make coffee right now. Come here. I'm sorry, my morning sickness is quite bad. Could we do this some other time when I'm feeling better? It's just morning sickness. It's fine, you'll feel better if you eat something. Come on, hurry up. Then, for an hour, Chloe's coffee-making lesson began. As I started feeling nauseous, Chloe opened the cupboard on her own, took out a plate, and placed a piece of bread. Eat this. You'll feel better if you eat. The smell of the bread made me feel even sicker, and I ran to the bathroom. With a headache and nausea, my mind was a blur. For the 3 hours until Timothy came home, I was holed up in the bathroom. Chloe kept knocking on the door in front of the bathroom, but I didn't have the energy to respond. Around 6 p.m., Timothy came home. First, Timothy was surprised to see Chloe making a fuss in front of the bathroom. I had fallen asleep in the bathroom, and when I woke up, Chloe and Timothy were arguing outside. Why did you suddenly come? Sophia is suffering from morning sickness, don't be a nuisance. I came to supervise whether this girl is properly doing her housework as a housewife. I bet she's just using her morning sickness as an excuse to be lazy. I was shocked that she can't even make coffee properly. The coffee Sophia makes is delicious. And what's this supervision about? Sophia isn't someone who would use morning sickness as an excuse to slack off on housework. If she couldn't do it, maybe her morning sickness is really bad? Sophia, you were holed up in the bathroom for 3 hours. Timothy is so naive, he's easily deceived. I really need to be here to guide Sophia. I got married to make those around me happy. Even if Sophia were slacking off, I wouldn't mind. As long as she's doing what she wants and staying by my side, I don't want anything more. No need for guidance. Please go home. I smiled at Timothy's words. The symptoms of my morning sickness had subsided, so I opened the bathroom door. Welcome home, Timothy. Chloe, sorry for leaving you alone. You! How can you lock yourself in the bathroom when you have a guest? What kind of nerve do you have? Well, I couldn't show Chloe my messy state, so I locked myself in the bathroom. I'm truly sorry about that. Anyway, I've made dinner, so make sure you eat all of it. With that, Chloe said, and Timothy pointed to the entrance. No, Mom, please go home. No way. I've already told Dad that I'm staying here. I don't trust young people. See, she didn't even prepare dinner because she was holed up in the bathroom with morning sickness. I'm definitely not going back. Chloe stubbornly refused to move. Forcing her out would not satisfy Chloe, so I decided to allow her to stay. Then, maybe you can stay for a while. But I knew Timothy was worried about me, but kicking her out now would only create more trouble later. I smiled at Timothy to reassure him. It's okay. After that, Chloe tried to force me to eat chicken. Lately, I've been mainly eating vegetables and fruits. With severe morning sickness, even the sight of fried food, let alone bread, made me feel sick. Chloe complained about this too, but Timothy was completely on my side, which was a great help. The next day, worried about leaving me alone with Chloe. Call me if anything happens. It's okay to lock yourself in the bathroom, Timothy said to me before going to work. As expected, Chloe complained about everything I did. If I cleaned, she complained I was too slow. If I did laundry, she said I should care more for Timothy's clothes than mine. Each time. All right. I just responded. When morning sickness hit and I rushed to the bathroom, Chloe would knock on the door. When I came out,
"Keep bathroom visits under 5 minutes,"
she said. Chloe did nothing but complain, while I struggled with housework in the midst of severe morning sickness. I knew this would happen when I allowed Chloe to stay, but honestly, I wanted her to go back to the in-laws' house soon. I did as much as Chloe said as I could without overexerting myself. Timothy, except for one day when he was late due to a company drinking party, came home early without overtime, and there didn't seem to be any major problems. After about 5 days of living like this, Chloe finally said something to me. That day, my morning sickness was particularly bad, and in the middle of cleaning, I left the vacuum cleaner and rushed to the bathroom, unable to come out for many minutes. Then Chloe stood in front of the bathroom and began to yell.
"Hey you! Weren't you in the middle of cleaning? Are you expecting me to do it? Enough is enough. Claiming to have severe morning sickness, are you just slacking off? Thinking you can just hide in the bathroom?"
I didn't have the energy to respond to Chloe, but she kept complaining endlessly. The symptoms of my morning sickness had subsided, but I didn't feel like facing the continually fussing Chloe, so I just sat on the toilet seat waiting for Chloe to calm down. As I was sighing, wondering whether to call Timothy. A wife who neglects her housework is not needed in this house, right? Such a useless woman does not deserve to be my son's wife. Leave this house, Chloe suddenly said. I immediately came out of the bathroom and understood. I replied with a broad smile and went straight to my room. Chloe followed me, looking puzzled, but I locked the door to my room, making sure she couldn't enter. Then, I packed a travel bag with some clothes and valuables that I had stored in my closet. Knowing Chloe would try to stop me if I left now, I waited until she left the front of my room. Chloe kept knocking on my room's door, but after waiting for about 2 hours, she finally left. I heard a door close in the distance, probably her going to the bathroom. I grabbed my bag and immediately left the house, getting a taxi to my parents' home. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mom, who was a housewife and at home, was very surprised. My dad wasn't at work, so I explained the situation to my mom first. I understand that Chloe loves her son and doesn't think highly of me. But still, it's annoying to be complained at up close. My mom didn't get particularly angry, but just gave a wry smile. Well, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict is common everywhere. It might be good for you to stay home for a while. Chloe seems like she can look after Timothy. You think so? Aren't you going to get mad about what she's doing to your daughter? Well, Sophia, you must be up to something, right? My mom seemed to see right through everything. Then, I contacted Timothy and told him I would stay at my parents' house until Chloe went back home. Timothy also felt it was safer that way, and I relaxed at my parents' house for the first time in a long time. The next day, as expected, Chloe came to my parents' house. When I opened the door and showed my face, Chloe turned red and started making a fuss.
"Why are you back at your parents' house? Hurry back and make Timothy's dinner. It's a failure as a wife to go to such lengths to avoid housework."
But I replied with a smile. Eh? I just did what you told me to, right? You said to leave, didn't you? Are you saying I should have slept outside instead of going back to my parents' house?
What's with this girl? So irritating. I didn't really mean for you to leave. I'm just saying you should do your housework properly.
I was doing my housework as you told me to. I don't understand why I have to do it quickly, but the quality of my housework doesn't change just because I went to the bathroom in the middle. Then Chloe's eyes narrowed in anger.
Don't talk nonsense. When I was pregnant, I didn't go to the bathroom so much. Eating makes the nausea go away. Despite that, you don't listen.
Then, from behind me, Mom came. With a troubled look, Mom gently spoke to Chloe. Chloe, you had a different symptom, didn't you? My daughter has different symptoms. She's a different person, so it's natural for her morning sickness symptoms to be different. Please don't assume she's the same just because you experienced it. What are you saying? Children should listen to their parents. At that, Chloe seemed taken aback for a moment, and I smiled. Huh. I see. So Chloe, you just wanted to manipulate me to do as you wish? No one will act exactly as you want them to. That includes Stephen as well. Confused by my words, Chloe tilted her head. Stephen? Your husband. You're so busy meddling in your son's household that you've completely forgotten about your own. Perhaps it's time you return to your own home? Then Chloe started making a phone call. Probably to her husband's number. But the call didn't connect, it seemed like she was blocked, and in a panic, Chloe rushed back home. Later, I heard from Timothy that when Chloe returned to the in-laws' house, there was only a divorce application stamped by her husband and a note with a single line on the table. The note apparently said that he would take all the retirement pay as the distribution of property, and everything else would be left to her. Chloe tried contacting her husband at his workplace, but he had already retired, and his whereabouts became unknown. But in reality, he hasn't retired from his job yet. He was staying for a month for handover and had asked the company to tell Chloe that he had retired if she called. Actually, Timothy and I knew where he was. He was staying in a business hotel and planning to live with a relative in a distant region after retirement. We were supposed to inform him when Chloe filed for divorce, and he said he wanted to start a new life then. About a week ago, when Chloe came to my house and it got late, I called him. Chloe is at our house, are you okay, Stephen? Aren't you lonely by yourself? When I asked him kindly, Raphael, who usually hardly spoke, opened up about his true feelings. Maybe because it was over the phone and not face-to-face, he could speak without stress. Sophia, you're the only one who worries about someone like me. My wife has always treated me like an ATM, never as a husband. When Timothy was young, if I tried to play with him, she'd say, "Don't touch him, you're dirty, stay away." Maybe that's why Timothy became unsure how to interact with me. I've always been timid and lived a rather dull life under my wife's thumb. You're right, I've always been lonely. At that moment, I thought I could use Fael to drive Chloe away. There would still be interactions with Chloe in the future. If I forced her out now, I could be endlessly complained at. In the worst case, if Chloe persuaded Raphael to leave their house and said they had nowhere to go, they might both end up at our house, making it difficult for us to refuse. I discussed it with Timothy, and he had been aware since he was young that his parents were a sham couple and wanted to do something about it. I had Timothy pretend to be working overtime and visit the in-laws' house to have a heart-to-heart talk with Raphael. Raphael then confessed to Timothy that he wanted a divorce from Chloe. So, we decided to have Raphael proceed with the preparations for the divorce. I had been waiting for the right moment when Chloe would seriously listen to me. I thought she might calm down a bit in a place away from her own territory, like my parents' house, and thankfully, it worked better than expected. Faced with her own issues, Chloe quickly returned to the in-laws' house, so I decided to go back to my house too. Timothy and I then persuaded Chloe. We carefully explained to her how she had been making Raphael suffer, that Raphael wanted to be free, and that if she continued to be difficult, Raphael was prepared to take the matter to court. We warned her that if it came to a court case, both Timothy and I would side with Raphael. Finally, Chloe stamped the divorce papers and submitted them to the office. After that, Chloe ended up living alone in the in-laws' house. She seemed lonely and wanted to live in our house, but Timothy firmly refused. If you come here, Sophia will go back to her parents' house. If that happens, I'll never consider you as my mother again. Just like you ignored Dad, I'll ignore you as if you didn't exist. With Timothy's firm statement, Chloe, dejected, went back to the in-laws' house. I feel fortunate to have such a reliable husband. As for Raphael, as soon as Timothy informed him about the finalized divorce, he immediately moved out of the relative's house and into a small apartment. He got a job in the same field as before his retirement. Though his income dropped a bit, he's more relaxed than when he lived with Chloe and now happily immerses himself in his hobbies every day. Later, I safely gave birth to a baby. A healthy girl. When I'm in trouble, my mom helps as much as possible, and Chloe is only allowed to meet my daughter when I permit it. Thanks to this, I'm managing to raise my child without stress. I believe that, though there will be challenges ahead, as long as I'm with Timothy, who cares deeply for me, we can overcome anything.